Got you for the next couple of hours talking what else local sports and a lot to get through. Typically this time of the year, we're usually reaching, to be honest with you, but not in 2024, whether it's the Olympics, suddenly the San Francisco Giants. I don't know how to figure out this team, and that's where we're going to start things. The Giants, just when we're ready to kick dirt on them, suddenly they're relevant again. There's noise with Steph Curry, the Olympics, and Jonathan Kuminga making noise also with the Golden State Warriors. Ev, what's going on with you this morning?
Not much, Dan. Happy to be back in the saddle with you. We also got a 49ers preseason game day coming up at 4 o'clock, so looking forward to seeing the second stringers, the third stringers. I don't know if a Brandon Aiyuk contract extension breaks during the middle of the game, if he gets traded in the middle of the game. I don't know what's going to happen there, but I'm excited to be rocking back with you. Dude, it's felt like a month. I know we got time to catch up throughout the show, too, the next 3 hours. Both of us hopped across the pond, came back. We're international men. What's up, dude?
Well, hey, it's good to be back with you. Yes, I do want to hear about Sweden because I do not know anything about Scandinavian countries, and that is on the bucket list. Yeah, so, well, Ibiza was just, you can go down to Union Street and at 11 o'clock at night, it's the same thing, right? It's just a bunch of people about 15 years younger than me just getting sideways. That's Ibiza. But, no, it was nice. I enjoy what it is that I did. I enjoy being with you. You know that, man. So my man, Evan Giddings, back in the hopper, back in the seat as we get after it. We're going to start things with the San Francisco Gigantes. The Giants come up winners last night, 3-2, as they come from behind. In a bullpen game, they were no hit through like 7 innings. It did not look good. But San Francisco somehow finds a way to squeak by with a digit victory to now go 2 games over the 500 mark. 2 games within the New York Mets of that final playoff spot. They still have to leapfrog a couple of teams, namely the Atlanta Braves and the St. Louis Cardinals. But are you buying? Are you in? Where are you at with the Giants as we look towards the top of the stretch and making a run towards the playoffs?
Well, they're doing everything they have to do to garner our trust, right? You're playing teams that you should beat, and they've been able to do that. I think they've won either 8 of 10 or 9 of 11. They're playing good baseball. They're playing the bottom feeders, but that's what you have to do. You got to win games. And this is a Giants team that has been above 500, Dan, now as it stands today, for 6 total days this season. And 2 of those 6 days have been the last 2 days. So the Giants that's a game last night that if you lose, and it sure looked like they were going to lose for a lot of it, then you're right back to where you started at 500. So, look, it's a nice comeback win. Obviously, you got to continue to stack W's. But if you're asking me if I'm buying anything about this team, I'm buying their pitching staff, and that's something that no matter how anemic their offense is, and getting no hit is certainly anemic, or getting close to no hit, I should say. The pitching staff is something I do believe in, and if they continue to show up, I don't see a reason why this team can't catch that third wild card spot at some point late on this season. I wonder if they can hold on to it, because between the Padres, the Diamondbacks, the Mets, and the Braves, and then the Giants, you might not have them as the third best team, but they're not playing those other 4 teams every single game. They got a series coming up against the Braves. I know they play the Diamondbacks and the Padres in September. But before you get to those series, you have to be in a position to make them count. And that's why I've been impressed with the Giants, is they're finally showing us that these series coming up later on in the season are going to matter. And that did not look like it was going to be the case maybe 2 months ago.
I don't know what the hell to believe with this baseball team. Just when you buy in and you feel as though this is a team leaning into their youth, and they had some identity early on about a month ago, they were playing well, and then they take the shovel and suddenly they're bad again. Just after the All-Star break, going into the All-Star break, they had shown some signs, and then coming out of the All-Star break, you lose 2 of 3 to Colorado, you get blown up by the Dodgers, and suddenly the wheels are coming off once again. They circle around 500. Finally, they've crossed the threshold, 2 games over. But I don't know, man. We've been here before where the team has looked good and looks like they're ready and they're pointing in the right direction to make a run. And then suddenly, they take 2 steps in the other direction. It's difficult to get your arms around this team, because what I've seen out of the Giants and what I've seen out of their general manager, and yes, we are going to go after, or at least we're going to talk a little bit about Farhan. He can't go unscathed. I haven't been in front of a live mic since, of course, the trade deadline. But this looks like a middling team, and he becomes what I think is just sort of a middling general manager. I'm sorry, I don't mean to throw water on this thing, but there's no reason not to get excited, all right? it's the Giants. You're within 2 games. Go nuts. Get out there, sell that place out, and, pull for the Giants. Why not? If you're a fan, go for it. I just think being realistic and looking at what it is that they're up against, and I look at that roster while the pitching is good, I just think that offense, once again, nothing jumps out at me. And I think that he had the opportunity, once again, at the trade deadline to do something, go one way or the other. But as he has shown from day one, that Farhan is a guy that's just very comfortable just driving it down the median. Like if you were to go out on 280 or 101, that guy is just literally knocking over cones, just going right down the middle of the road, not wanting to lean in on the youth, and then, not simply backing his team all the way, but just getting rid of Alex Cobb, but yet, I'm not going to sell everybody. And it's the way he's been from day one. So I didn't want to start things talking about the San Francisco Giants by omitting what I think, once again, was another miss on the part of Farhan. Just to revisit the trade deadline, your thoughts on what it is that he did or did not do.
Well, the trade deadline reaped a little bit of benefit last night, Dan. I mean, Mark Hanna had the walk-off hit.
And Snell has been amazing. No, you're right. And in the short term...
I'm poking fun, but...
No, but I think you're absolutely right. In the short term, I could be proven wrong because he certainly looks like he did the right thing, and I'm talking about Farhan, especially hanging on to Snell and keeping these guys. The Giants have been so good since, quote-unquote, that D-Day and the deadline. So, as of right now, you got to give Farhan an A+. But I'm just saying historically, man, the thing is with me.
Talk to me, Dan.
It's so good to have my therapist back.
I'll put you on the couch.
Yeah, let me lean back here and just tell you, well, it just started when I was a kid.
Talk to Uncle E.
Issues with, no. Here's the thing, is that when we got this guy coming from the Dodgers, right, this young brainiac, we're thinking, the Dodgers, we're going to get their secret sauce,
Yeah.
Let's face it, we're all envious of L.A. We live look at San Francisco right now. We're freezing. It's like 55 out to the middle of August.
It'll clear by midday.
Yeah, right?
It'll break.
I mean, and then we turn on the tube and we watch these suntan, beautiful people out there at Dodger Stadium. It's just like, God, where is that place? It's like a kid and you're watching the Rose Bowl and you're like, my God, is that on planet Earth? And so we're thinking we're getting this guy who's going to bring and sprinkle some of that pixie dust of the Dodgers, the kid, Farhan, we got him. Not only that, but his pedigree takes you back to the Oakland A's and Billy Beane. And you're thinking, man, we've got this young guy who is just going to change things for the San Francisco Giants. And when you look back on it in 6 years, and I'm not hammering on the guy, but he's just a dude. He's just an average guy. Have you seen him at any point like get innovative and sell everybody? Or usually when you bring in somebody that they're going to bring in their vision, whether it's right or wrong, they're going to go young. And they're going to do some things that are just going to gut the program, find their guys through the draft, through trades, and then they're going to reestablish the team under their name and their control. But what is it? What are the Giants, aside from that 1 year of 3 years ago? This is a team that was 500 a year ago, around 500 the year before, and I think that's who this dude is. He's just as excited as we wanted to be about him. When the dust settles and he's standing there, he's just an average guy. I mean, he's not anybody to get excited about when I look at it after 6 years. It's just what he did in this trade deadline is sort of his trademark. It's sort of what he did when he got the job in his first year and a couple of months later he had a trade deadline and he hangs on to Bumgarner and he hangs on to Will Smith, but yet he trades Melanson. It's like, dude, what are we doing here? One or the other. You're the guy. Clean the room. What are we doing? Pull the scab. Let's go. Pull that Band-Aid. But it's just Mr. I'm very safe just being in the middle of the road. Mr. Middling. And that's who he is. And that's who the Giants reflect that character when I look at them right now. I'm sorry. I'd love to get excited about a team that's finally gotten over the threshold, 2 games over 500. But I think at the end of the day, you're going to be Farhan, which is, once again, that guy is just driving it down the middle of the road, 81 up and 81 down.
Well, as you bring it back to this season, they've been playing good baseball against bad teams, but they've done that all season. Like, they're 11-3 in their last 14. They had the 4-game sweep against the Rockies prior to the deadline, which may or may not have saved a lot of the guys that you wanted to kind of move on from, Dan.
Yeah.
I mean, my frustration at the deadline is based on what we saw last night, which was not going out and addressing your clear biggest need, which is your offense. You have no bats. And I understand that moving off of someone like Soler, who was not performing, it wasn't as if they just, traded away Barry Bonds. But that cleared a path for a younger player. And, bringing him Mark Canha. Look, the guy's, I think, 8 for his first 14 at the plate. He's hitting well, but that'll probably taper off at some point. And who are you left with? Tyler Fitzgerald, Elliot Ramos, a couple of rookies who have kind of led you offensively. To me, that's not enough. It isn't enough once you get into a position where you're going to have to contend with teams that are going to be in October. Again, the Milwaukees, the San Diegos, the Arizonas, in my opinion. I'm not even talking about the Dodgers, who, by the way, they got their own problems. The Padres are only 2.5 back in the division right now. They're starting to falter because they've been hit with a bevy of injuries. And that is really, I think, where the Giants have a chance. And it might sound like fool's gold, but it's not just based on them. Like, their team in a vacuum is, I think, probably better than they've played this year. They're a little bit above average. Like, their starting pitching staff have been much better than it's been this year. And their offense is probably what it should be, which is towards the bottom of the barrel. But if you look at Atlanta, they're starting to fall off a cliff. The New York Mets, I'm not sure I believe in them. The Pittsburgh Pirates have lost, I think, their previous 5 until last night. Like, there are teams around them. The St. Louis Cardinals have a negative 40 run differential. There are teams around them that I don't believe in less than the Giants. Or I should say, I believe more in the Giants than I do believe in those teams around them. And that might not be a reason to get happy, but it's a reason for me to believe. And once the Giants clear this stretch, they have 9 more days against crap teams. That's, to me, when they start. If they can make up enough ground to put themselves in a position, which right now they stand, 2 games back of the third wild card spot of the New York Mets, if they can at least climb within a game or, God forbid, even own possession of the third wild card at some point in the next 9 days, I think there's reason to get excited. Because if they can't do it, they got an absolute gauntlet at the tail end of August and into September that I think is going to erase all hopes of a postseason performance. And this is where I am with you in regards to Farhan. If you don't make the postseason, I really do have to think about what you do here. Like, seriously, what is your job? Because I think he does a pretty good job at tinkering, at finding some value, trimming the hedges. I'm sorry, I need a gardener. Like, I need a guy to tend the garden. If I'm growing a lemon tree, I need lemons. I can't just look at it and say, well, it's pretty good. The roots are coming along, and this tree is just, it's on the kind of the middle side of things. It's not too bad. It's not too. No. I need a full-fledged thing that bears fruit, and the Giants have not borne fruit all but one season in the last 6. And if, Dan, you and I were doing this job for 6 years, well, I certainly hope so. I love you. If we're doing 6 years of this job and we have one good year of shows, we're not going to be on the air. Like, they're not going to continue to put a poor product on this station. And that's what the Giants have done for the better part of the last decade, is put a poor product on the field. And the man that has every single, opportunity to change that product has not done it.
Well, first of all, we will not be doing this show together for the next 6 years, because in the next month, you could get the call from the networks, because we all know where you're headed like a bullet to the very top in terms of sportscasting. But you're right. Somebody's got to be a fall guy. And I actually like Farhan. And, hey, listen, it's worth – Robbie Ray pitched last night, right? Like, he struggled, but one of the things that has been sort of his trademark throughout his career is that he's got a bulldog in him. Like, you knew he's going to power through. Yeah. And that was very indicative last night. But Robbie Ray came to the San Francisco Giants for what? Mitch Haniger? Go look at Mitch Haniger's numbers this year. He's terrible with Seattle. I don't even think he's playing. So sometimes you have to recognize what it is that Farhan has done well. And Farhan certainly fleeced the Seattle Mariners to get Robbie Ray. He's done some good things, but you're right. At the end of the day, after 6 years, it's not a matter of, okay, we can sit here and parse through what you've done well and not done well, but we cannot continue to miss the playoffs, and somebody's got to go. And you know how this works. You're a big boy, and heads got to roll. And unfortunately, it's going to be Farhan that's going to take the axe here. I mean, think about it. We know when a GM comes into a situation and changes things. You can feel it right from the get-go. He's not a GM, but look at Harbaugh with the Chargers. they're going to be better. And they haven't even played a game. I can almost guarantee you that. Some guys just step in to an arena, to an environment, and they change things just immediately upon their arrival. And when I think of guys that GMs that make a difference, think about Eric Neander, the guy with the Tampa Bay Rays. The Tampa Bay Rays are basically the same market as that of the Oakland A's, right? And they get about as many fans. Sorry, I have to go after your Oakland A's this early in the morning.
No. By the way, I was just looking up. Did you hear Jim Harbaugh's response, by the way, to the Michigan allegations from that? I think they came down a couple of days.
Full denial, but what did he say?
Well, let's just listen to it.
Never lie, never cheat, never steal. I was raised with that lesson. I have raised my family on that lesson.
So
I have preached that lesson to the teams that I've coached. No one's perfect. If you stumble, you apologize, and you make it right. Today, I do not apologize. I did not participate, was not aware, nor complicit in those said allegations. So for me, it's back to work and attacking with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind.
Unknown to mankind. How do I vote for that guy?
Dude,
is a write-in ballot?
I will write him in if I need to. Attack him with an enthusiasm.
For me, it's back to work and attacking with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind.
Where's that, Farhan?
I love that.
Where is that, Farhan?
You know what?
That's what I need in my life.
Come on, man. I know you're a Chargers guy.
How can
right?
you not love that guy, though? No, seriously, like, I loved him when he was in San Francisco. I loved him a little bit less so when he was at Stanford because I was a Cal fan growing up. But you can only respect what this man has done. That's why I was rooting for Michigan this year, despite all the allegations that were swirling. But, dude, that is a leader of men.
That's again, when you have a significant personality that steps in the building, things change like that. I talked about Neander, Mike Hazen for the Arizona Diamondbacks. There are guys in this league. When you think about the top GMs, the top 15 or 20, Farhan's not even in that conversation. And that's just based on the players and the quality of play and whether or not that team's winning or losing and making a change and a difference. And there are so many other general managers right now. Even Cashman, who's now, was once the young puppy, is now the old veteran. He continues to get things done. And it's just a matter of Farhan. We've given you the benefit of the doubt, but I thought he was just going to be, even in this trade deadline, it might have been unpopular, but if he moved Snell and if he brought up Luciano and he leaned in on Matos, making your mistakes up at this level, and Elliot Ramos, and got rid of Conforto, got rid of Flores, got rid of Yastrzemski, got rid of all of this dead weight, essentially. Even Lamont Wade, I said this before the trade deadline. As Rizzo's out with the New York Yankees, Cashman will overpay for a first baseman to make a stretch run at yet another World Series. It's just being that innovative guy. Now, I know that looks silly at this juncture because the Giants have played so well, but I'm afraid that once again the wheels are going to come off, and as you mentioned, once again they have to play good teams, that they're going to go sub 500. The season will come and go, and we will have missed our opportunity once again to have cashed in and build for the future. But, I guess in the here and now, we'll stay in the euphoric state of 2 games over 500 and still within striking distance.
No, it just feels like the bar has been set so low for a franchise that is as historic as the San Francisco, formerly New York Giants, that this is honestly the way I feel. Whether it's right or wrong, Dan, I do think that Farhan is going to be back next season.
Wow.
Even if they miss the postseason. And the reason being, you saw last night against the Tigers, it's your 2 and 3 hole hitters. I know that in a perfect world, Tyler Fitzgerald and Elliot Ramos are not guys that should be hitting 2 and 3. Like, they're not hitting 2 and 3 on the Dodgers. They might not even be hitting 2 and 3 on a healthy Braves team. Neither of them, I'm saying. But the young players are finally starting to show something. And I do believe that even if they miss the postseason, unless they fall completely off a cliff, but there is enough to sell the ownership of this team on the vision for next year and the year after. And Farhan, to your point, has done things like the the origin story of the Haniger trade is that they gave him a 4-year contract, I think.
Yeah.
And they got off it in under 1 season, and it looks like that's a great move. I think the same thing is probably going to happen with Soler, who, by the way, has not helped an Atlanta team that's lost 6 in a row since he's been traded there. So those kinds of moves are in the intelligent category, but there's nothing big. There's no big fish that Farhan, there's no big thing that Farhan can hang his hat on. Even the 107 season, you were given the, I don't know if it's, benefit of the doubt, but you were also given a lot of pieces, a la Posey, Crawford, Belt. The one thing that he did retain from the season before was Gosman chose not to trade him at the deadline. That worked out for him. The emergence of a Webb was something that helped him. Like, there are things that he can, I think, sell to ownership. And this is really the kind of the bottom, or I should say, like, the crux of the issue for me, Dan. The crux of the issue is that the Johnsons appear to be all right with mediocrity. They appear to be all right with maybe getting in, challenging, staying competitive, but not having any form or standard for what there is when you think of Giants baseball. When I ask you what is the bottom line, the standard for the San Francisco Giants, even going back 10 years, because at this point, 2014 is the last time they won a World Series. 10 years ago, you would say winning championships. 10 years later, it would be challenging for a postseason position. Like that's the standard here in San Francisco. And that's not what I think of when I think of an historic franchise, which the Giants are. So to me, yes, Farhan is quote unquote a problem. I do think his job is safe heading into next season because of the young guys basically saving his ass. But I also think it comes down to the ownership group just being okay with just being a team.
That's interesting. I think that he's gone if they don't get to the playoffs, simply because if it was, we were 4 years into this, even 5 years, 6 is too many. It's just too many.
Well, it's going to be 7.
When you talk about the kids, I mean, Tyler Fitzgerald, he just stumbled upon, right? I mean, that was a utility guy that played as well. Who the hell saw that coming? And Elliot Ramos was simply because out of need. It's not as though he picked these kids out of the choir and said, no, I see talent. You're starting in center field. No. Elliot Ramos got an opportunity to play out of need because Jung-Hoo Lee and because of injuries.
No, but at the same time, we give credit to the developmental staff, say, of the Warriors for Jordan Poole, even though I kind of think that a lot of it's on him. Like, anytime a player develops and creates, a name for themselves, they put the work in. But the front offices do get credit for those players emerging. You can't say that the Warriors haven't developed any players in the last 5-10 years or, whatever it is, since the Curry, Draymond, and Clays, because that's simply not true, even though I do think more credit should go to the players. And I think the same thing applies to the Giants. Like, whether or not you like it, if Matos becomes something, if, Luciano becomes something, Ramos and Fitzgerald already look like something, Farhan gets credit for that.
Is Luciano's up with the team, right?
Yeah.
Get his ass in the DH spot.
Well, but, do you want a 22-year-old kid out there every single day?
Well, why is he here? Mark Canha, I know what I'm getting out of Canha, and yes, he had the game winner last night, but if I'm going to get this kid up, get your at-bats. The hell are we doing here? Or go back down to Sacramento. He's still in that learning curve. Learn how to hit Major League pitching. I don't know if that's on Melvin. I don't know if that's on... I'm all about the kids. If it was up to me, I would lean... My outfield would be Matos, it would be Elliot Ramos, and it would be, I'd get rid of Conforto and give me somebody else.
Well, it could be that next year.
And I want kid. And this Fitzgerald guy, where are you at with this guy? Like, is he legit? I can't figure him out.
I don't want to throw cold water on him because he's been hitting like crap, but all I'll say is this. When I left to go to Sweden, this guy was a Sacramento River Cat. When I came back, he was Roger Hornsby. And I don't know who this guy is, but apparently nobody can get him out.
You're choking on your pickle herring out there in Sweden as you're watching these guys just ascend.
Which, by the way, is an absolute delicacy. You do understand the luxury of pickled herring, and that might be the whitest thing that I've ever said in my life. Pickled herring is delicious. But Tyler Fitzgerald, he's Ryan Sandberg apparently at this point. Like, this dude has been hitting the crap out of the ball, and he's been doing it consistently. Do I think that he's a 320 hitter with a 1,000 OPS? No. But to have a guy that can, like, I think in a perfect world, eventually next year at some point, he'll probably be, your 6, your 7 hitter. He's a good piece. But that's the thing, and I think maybe the shining light of this season so far, the silver lining, I should say, is you found a couple pieces. Before this season, I didn't know if the Giants had any pieces that you could rely on. Number one, being on the team in 3 or 4 years, and number two, being good in 3 or 4 years. I'm not saying Fitzgerald's going to be an all-star, but Ramos has already been an all-star. Matos, I think, has potential to be an everyday starting outfielder. Jung Hoo Lee's going to be back next year, who's a young piece. Like, they have guys, and finally, young players that you can envision being something. And I just think that's the selling point for Zaidi. If he walks into Charles Johnson's office and Greg Johnson's office at the end of this season and says, hey, this is why I deserve to be around, Exhibit A, B, and C are going to be players under the age of 25.
All right, we continue here on 95.7 The Game. I think we're done with the Giants, but if anybody wants to call in and talk about San Francisco and where they're at, their fate, whether you're buying whether this team, if you're getting into this moment where a team is playing well, 2 games over 500, once again eyeing the postseason, we're here for you. We can get, by the way, Kurt Casale yesterday.
Oh, God.
3 errors in a game by a catcher. Did I see that correctly? It was the first time since like the 1930s that a Giants catcher has committed 3 errors in a game.
Yeah, and by the way, Dan, back in the 30s, they caught barehanded.
Not true, but thank you.
Yeah, I know, just kidding.
All right, we continue here. See, I did a show with Sam Lubin. Now, if Sammy was here, we'd be talking Giants for another 3 hours.
Yeah, that's okay, because we only got 2.5, and we should get off them.
So we'll get into, let's switch things to, I want to go a little football here. What were you going to say?
No, he did have 3 errors. Look, he had, a couple throwing errors and a catcher's interference?
It was bad.
Come on, Casale.
My God.
There's not even an E in Kurt.
All right, let's do a little Brandon Aiyuk, but if you guys want to dig up the Giants and talk a little bit more about San Francisco and what's going on with them, we'll do that as well. Evan Giddings is back. Pickle herrings in Sweden doing his thing. We'll hear about that and much, much more. We continue. 95.7 The Game, just getting underway on a Saturday, and we'll be back after this.
This is the story of the one. As a maintenance engineer, he hears things differently. To the untrained ear, everything on his shop floor.
a little football talk and some Brandon Aiyuk. But before we do that, somebody on the text line. By the way, the text line, I just opened this thing up. And, of course, they're reaping praise at what Evan Giddings, as well you should. And then this guy just says, where is Ken Griffey Jr. when you need him to kick me off the field? Well, thanks for listening to my stories as I dig him up from Seattle. When, yes, indeed, Ken Griffey Jr. had me removed from Safeco Field. But, my man, the 415, just no love for the Kahuna. Get over here. I want to give you just a big smooch on the cheek, whoever you are. But talk to me, the pickle herring, why do you enjoy it? Remind people at home exactly what it is and where you were.
All right, so I was over in Stockholm, Sweden for a couple weeks. I was there to see my sister. She lives in Stockholm, has 3 beautiful children. And we were one night, out in the archipelago staring at stars, which, by the way, are very few and far between because, as you know, Dan, it's like light until 11 p.m. and then the sun comes up at 2. So you get 3 hours of darkness. But we're sitting there, I'm like, I don't really know what Swedish food is. Not really sure what a classic Swedish dinner is, and it's mostly schnapps. But they were like, it's just all kinds of pickled herring, and so I wanted to have as much pickled herring as possible. You can have it, with different sauces. Sometimes it's some Dijon, some mayo. You can put it with other lox. You put it basically just put it on everything, and it comes in pickled jars. You can actually buy it from the store, prepare it yourself. But basically, there was 6 different kinds of herring for a quintessential Swedish dinner that we had out on one of these islands in the archipelago. And you said there might be 80 of them. I don't know. There might be more. It's like Minnesota, the place of 10,000 lakes, place of 10,000 islands.
Actually, it's more it's more like 20,000 or 25,000.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, but I probably got to 4 or 5 islands over the course of 4 or 5 days. You just kind of bounced around because people have a ton of boats out there. But yeah, herring is unbelievable. And I needed to try and see if I could find some here in San Francisco, although it's probably marked up and 6 times as expensive.
So I'm looking up things to do in Stockholm. Watch the sunset at Montelivsvallsvägen. The cliff path. So apparently cobblestone streets and just, and beer, the craft beer at a eco hub by the name of Hammarby is world renowned.
Well, it's a very utopian city. It feels like everything is perfectly in its place. The streets are clean. Although it's funny, there's so many city problems everywhere. Like we deal with some stuff here in San Francisco, but it goes on around the world. Like I was talking to this Swede who is I guess the equivalent of a barista just at a coffee shop. And he was talking about how bad the crime was in Stockholm. And I'm looking around and I'm thinking, really? So what, you guys had 2 murders this year? I mean, like what?
Somebody stole a bike.
Yeah, exactly. So no. The crime is just terrible. All these young juveniles, these hooligans are running around the streets. The gangs are getting so bad, and it's just because it's never happened before that they feel like it is so terrible. And I wanted to say, I'll just take a trip across the pond and tell me what crime is really like.
Come to San Francisco. We'll show you what crime is. What's your equivalent to a Walgreens out here in Stockholm? Okay, well, let me ask you this. Is there someone urinating in aisle 3 in that place every day? I can pretty much rest assure you that they are not. So.
How many CVSs have you shut down in the past year? No, seriously. And I love this city. I try to defend this city when people ever come through and talk about how bad it's gotten. I think that it is doing just fine. In fact, I hope it's on its way up. But yeah, in comparison, there is no comparison. Well, Stockholm is incredible.
You know what's funny is that San Francisco, it's kind of like what surfers would tell you. It's like a good surf spot. Like, people, you always hear about this from afar because it's getting such a bad rap and such not only from a national perspective, but from around the world. Ooh, I hear about San Francisco and it's just going to the dogs. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Stay away. Don't buy a house. Don't come anywhere near this place. It's just like a surf spot. Like, yeah, no, it's pretty jagged out there. You don't want anything to do with it. Just keep this thing intimate. But
that's what they kept trying to tell me on Waianae. They're like, Howleys don't come by this place, okay? It's not the waves are terrible. The water's cold. No one wants you on the west side of Oahu. Just go back to Waikiki and have some fun.
My God, you were in Waianae?
That was the first place I stayed in Hawaii.
That's what I love about him. Because instead of going to an ABC store right there at, a hotel smashed right down what's the equivalent of Fisherman's Wharf, and that being Waikiki Beach. He's out on the other side of the island in Waianae. You're lucky because if you haven't seen Evan Giddings is about as howly as it gets, which is essentially a white guy.
Oh, yeah.
And you're lucky that someone didn't stick an apple in your mouth and you weren't getting roasted on a rotisserie out there. Like, I'm surprised you made it out alive.
Well, it's funny. Me and my brother were out at one of the local beaches, and of course, there's not a lot of us Caucasians walking around out there. It's all the natives. And one older gentleman walks up to us and goes, "Hey, what's going on, guys?" We're just like, "Oh, out there swimming, seeing some turtles." We don't know anything about the local dynamic of Oahu or Hawaii in general. We hadn't been there before. And so he walks up to us and he says, "Hey, what's going on?" We said, "Oh, well, actually, we're staying with our family friend." And then we were okay. Like, we were there to see someone. We were staying with somebody who was a local. And then we were all right. But then he follows it up by saying, "Hey, didn't the airplane manual tell you not to come to Waianae?"
Well, you know what you do. The next time you go there, all right, you sit down with me, get your buddy. We'll go into a classroom, and then I'll teach you Pidgin. So if you can speak the local lingo,
Pidgin.
It'll take off some of the angst. So when the guy comes up to you and he says, "Excuse me, are you lost?" Say, "No, brother, what's wrong with you? I live right around the corner." You gotta be able to give them the local lingo, so you're going to be, so they know you're one of them. You can't just drop, "Oh, it's a pleasure to meet you, and I'm from out of town. Where are you from, sir?" I mean, that's the quickest way to end up naked with no money in your wallet and phone gone.
Well, I know this is radio, and so some people are watching on YouTube and Twitch, but Dan, there's a very big difference between you talking like that and me talking like that. No one's going to buy, unless I grow some dreads and try and become one of those ridiculous white Rastas, that anybody is going to buy that I'm a local from Hawaii.
All right. Well, speaking of locals, how about Brandon Aiyuk? Is he going to be local for much longer? A lot of discussion. And I tell you what, as the world turns, that's a good soap opera, because the latest now is that, once again, the two sides are back at the table, and it looks as though a deal could be imminent between the 49ers and Brandon Aiyuk. How do you see things? Is this thing going to get resolved? Is it, according to, was it Matt Maiocco, I think, broke the most recent story, that they're once again negotiating and talking about signing Brandon Aiyuk to come back to the 49ers, despite just over the last 48 hours where there were numerous teams that were interested in his services, and it looked as though a trade was in the winds. But now it looks as though potentially he could be back with San Francisco. What do you believe?
Yeah, so the latest report yesterday, this is from Tom Pelissero of NFL Network. After months of speculation, sporadic negotiations, and recent trade talks, the 49ers are pushing to get a deal done that keeps Brandon Aiyuk at San Francisco for the long haul. Nothing done, but finally things are moving. Jordan Schultz, who was on with Willard and Dibbs yesterday, he's an NFL insider, also came out and talked about basically the sweet spot is going to be somewhere around $28 million. So around the Amon-Ra St. Brown deal, which I think is what Brandon Aiyuk always wanted in the first place, but the Niners had been between $25 and $26 million, which was closer to Devontae Smith. We might have talked about this a couple months ago. I always felt like that was going to be the gap. Devontae Smith at 25 and Amon-Ra St. Brown at about $28 million. And then where Matt Maiocco came in yesterday, I thought was huge, because he reported that the 49ers and the Browns had agreed to a trade that would have sent Aiyuk to Cleveland for Amari Cooper, a second round, and a fifth round
pick.
Give
me that.
But
give me that.
Aiyuk declined, and he didn't want to play for Cleveland. So that's the hang up there. And this is why I feel like everybody that's offered an opinion on the Aiyuk situation is kind of talking out of both sides in their mouth. Because what I believe is that if the Niners had a deal that they liked and that Aiyuk was going to sign off on, he would be gone. He would be out of town. And mainly, if the Niners had an offer that was good enough for them, even more so. For example, it was also reported somewhere that the Niners had been asking, whether it was around the trade deadline or even as recently as this week, for 2 first-round picks. I think if a team had ponied up 2 first-round picks for Brandon Aiyuk, he would not be in a Niners uniform. He would be gone. The issue is that they weren't able to do it before the draft. And so now I feel like once they decided not to trade Aiyuk on draft day, they gave him more power to determine his future, because they weren't going to be able to get anything immediately that would help them. Outside of it sounds like Amari Cooper. But I don't know about you, Dan. Like, how do you read that? How do you read that the Niners basically gave Aiyuk the option to negotiate with Cleveland, New England. Like, it sounds like the hang-up in that situation was Aiyuk. But if you believe that Amari Cooper, a second and a fifth-round pick, is a good enough trade, shouldn't that not matter to the 49ers? Shouldn't they just pull the trigger regardless?
Yeah, that to me that's a boatload. I would do that in a heartbeat. Are you kidding me? You give me Amari Cooper, not as good as Brandon Aiyuk, but that dude's a 1,000-yard receiver. Amari Cooper is about as precise of a route runner that you're going to get in the NFL. You talk about the route tree, that dude is right there. He embodies what it is that you're looking for in the prototypical wide receiver. I mean, there's a drop-off, but it's not that significant. And then you're giving me a second and a fifth? I would jump at that. I would do that yesterday. I think they called Brandon Aiyuk's bluff at the end of the day. He demanded a trade, and they said, okay, here it is. We want you. We would rather have Amari Cooper and a second and a fifth any day of the week as far as I'm concerned. I can't speak for Lynch and obviously Kyle Shanahan. And I think that the reason that they're at a table right now and discussing things is because they called this bluff. And it's not coincidental that today's the first game, right? Preseason, and you start missing game checks, which is, we're talking about game checks now, which has got to be upwards to what someone reported $700K, $750,000 on a $14.1 million deal. So
yeah,
things
the
begin to
49ers
change.
can forgive Aiyuk's fines, though.
They can, but you see what I'm saying here, that things begin to come to a head. I think Brandon Aiyuk tried to get into a staring contest, and he just blinked. Like, you're playing with the big boys here, and I think that the 49ers and Lynch and Shanahan arrived at a place where they're like, okay, it's time to move on, and we're going to go to another place that doesn't involve Brandon Aiyuk. And to me, what really was a telltale sign is when he didn't go to New England. Because if New England was going to give you what it is that you were asking for.
$32 million was reported the number per year.
We don't know how much of that's guaranteed. A lot of people get hung up on the APY, right? And that, an agent will tell you just how much of that's guaranteed. But if it is indeed about the money, then why didn't you go to New England? What that told me is that he wants to play for a winner. And if you want to play for a winner and you want to win games, because New England's going to win, 6, maybe 7 games next year? I mean, you don't even know who your starting quarterback is. Jacoby Brissett? I mean, give me a break. What that told me is that if it's not about money and you want to win, you don't want to leave San Francisco. You just showed your hand. You don't want to leave the Niners. Because if you did, you'd be in New England. And if you want to be in San Francisco, well, then this is the money you're going to be playing for.
True, but I guess where I would push back is that it sounds like the average price tag, or the annual average price tag, has actually risen in recent months. The Niners, the report was back in May, that had been the only contract that they had offered up until, it sounds like, maybe even yesterday when they got back in a renegotiation. But the offer reportedly for Mike Silver of the SF Chronicle is $26 million. And now sounds like that average salary has come up to 28. So I guess where I would push back on you, Dan, is it sounds like Aiyuk is actually winning these negotiations to me. And this is why, if you're the 49ers and you're trying to, what confuses me so much about this offseason is I don't know what they were trying to accomplish. Were they trying to keep Aiyuk under lock and key? Because if so, I think they would have been in a better position to get what they wanted at an average value if they did it earlier in the offseason. Even if it was around the same time as Amon-Ra, but beforehand. The Niners, to me, messed up this summer when they didn't try to get out in front of what has now become just a ridiculous negotiation that no one really knows what's going on. We got reports about him being traded to the Steelers. We got reports about him having an offer on the table from the Browns, from the Patriots, but he doesn't want to go there. Where does he want to be? Where do the Niners want him? I'm not too sure, because to me, the entire objective of the 49ers Aiyuk contract negotiations this summer was to win the deal, was to steer the direction of future negotiations back from where it was with Bosa last offseason, where he took every single penny possible from the 49ers and steer it back into a situation or a direction where the Niners could win future deals. I think they wanted to use Brandon Aiyuk as an example that they are the team, the franchise that does not lose negotiations. They do not give in to what the player wants. And I just think they vastly miscalculated Brandon Aiyuk's character and what he was willing to do in order to get his money, because the entire time they wanted him. It's not as if they haven't said, well, Brandon, I think we think you're great, but we think you're replaceable. No, they've said every step of the way that they believe that he is the guy for this team to help get them back to a place they want to go, which is the Super Bowl. So I think where they messed up was not getting this done early in the offseason, because the moment they got past the NFL draft, to me, they lost every opportunity unless they were indeed willing to trade him, which, based on the reports that have come out of the recent days, I don't think they ever wanted to trade him unless it was going to be on draft night. Once they said no to a first-round pick, which apparently was on the table from the Pittsburgh Steelers, to me, they lost their leverage with Brandon Aiyuk, and he's had them by the you-know-whats ever since.
But if Cleveland comes knocking, and you're the GM, Ev, and they want to give you Amari Cooper a second and a fifth, I'm maybe it's just me. I leap at that. I'm like, where do we sign? Let's do this now. I mean, would you pull the trigger on that?
On Aiyuk?
Personally,
I would give him 28 today.
No, I would. But if it's about a trade, all right, and if Cleveland's saying you can have Amari Cooper, a second and a fifth.
Not at this point. No, because, look, I think Amari Cooper's good. He's on the wrong side of 30, number one.
Well, you're only going to play for a year, basically.
No, I know, but then at that point, it becomes a second-round pick and a salary dump. And what confused me was what the Niners did around the NFL draft. Because if they drafted Ricky Pearsall and believed in him so much, well, then I am okay with moving off of him, Brandon Aiyuk to go get Amari Cooper and future compensation. It also gets me cheaper at the wide receiver position. It also means that I don't have to pay him $28 or $30 million for the next 3 to 4 years. But that to me was never their objective. Their objective was to always pay Aiyuk and was to get him at their number. And those two things, as we found out, are not mutually exclusive. They were never going to be able to accomplish that unless they did it at the beginning of the offseason when the price tag was lower. Right now, Brandon Aiyuk, I don't think there's a guarantee he signs by 4 o'clock, by kickoff in Tennessee when the Niners take on the Titans in preseason game number 1. I don't think there's a guarantee of that, because there's also another wide receiver out there that has not been compensated, and that is CeeDee Lamb. And I think Lamb is waiting to see what Aiyuk gets. And so Aiyuk, to me, can sit pretty. He already knows that the Niners have, they've figured out deals, but they've also not been willing to move him to a place that he doesn't want to sign to. And so I think that's where he has the leverage, is that, let's say they had the deal with Cleveland. Okay, the moment that Cleveland finds out that Brandon Aiyuk is not signing a contract extension, that deal is off the table, because they're not getting their wide receiver of the future. Same with New England. They would pay Brandon Aiyuk $32 million per year. I don't care what the guaranteed money was. They would do that deal, but he's not signing an extension in New England. It sounds like the only place that Aiyuk was willing, and I think this is interesting, the only place that Aiyuk was willing to sign was Pittsburgh. And that's also the place where the Niners did not have a good deal, because there were not enough compensatory players coming back. They weren't getting Pickens. There's nobody else on that roster in terms of wide receivers that I want. And they weren't even willing to give you a first-round pick. So I just think it's very interesting that the one place that Aiyuk is open to being traded to is the one place that the Niners have said have not gotten us the deal that we want. And so the whole time has just been this cat and mouse game played out through the media, whether it's Mayoko, is very well respected, or through Mike Silver, or through Tom Pelissero, or Mike Garafolo, whoever you trust. It's this cat and mouse game of reporting who wants what to make Aiyuk either look like a guy who's a diva wide receiver, who's disgruntled and dissatisfied, or the guy that's got all the leverage. And I really don't care, quite frankly, because to me the Niners have boggled this thing from the get-go when they did not get this done either before the draft in terms of a contract signing or trading him. You should have made any of these decisions before draft night.
Is there really a big difference between Pittsburgh and New England if I'm Brandon Aiyuk? It's almost as though he was adamant, I'm not going to New England. That's a rebuild. Really? I'm sure Pittsburgh's a little further along and maybe a better team, but I don't know how much better they are. I mean, their quarterback situation's in flux as well.
Yeah, but they've never had a losing season under Mike Tomlin.
And I think Tomlin is sort of the X factor there. He's sort of a guy that is what players deem as a player-friendly coach.
If Belichick was still in New England, I think there may have been some sort of back and forth there.
Just to get back, just to revisit what it is that you're saying, I think that the two sides were very close to a deal back in April. And I think that they were, as the 49ers have a number. And they were sticking by that. But there's just like any negotiations. There was some bartering and back and forth. But it almost felt as though this was going to get done in a matter of days or weeks. And then it was a series of events or circumstances that were beyond everybody's control. First of which was Amon-Ra St. Brown. And he signs that deal where he's getting 30 per with the Detroit Lions as he re-upped. And suddenly that just threw a wrench into everything. As they were progressing in terms of negotiations between the Niners and Brandon Aiyuk's camp. All of a sudden, Amon-Ra St. Brown signs, and then Brandon Aiyuk and company are like, whoa. Wait a minute. Give us a day or two. Let us rethink this. And suddenly, they retreat, and then things get progressively worse because nobody saw what it is that Justin Jefferson was going to do. And so I think the timing in this had a lot to do with where we're at right now. Because I truly believe that in April, both sides were in a room. I think there was a contract. It was just a matter of somebody's John Hancock. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown came down the pipe and it stalled everything. And then Justin Jefferson blew everything out of the water. And then everybody retreated and suddenly it became tribal. We're on this side and you're on the other side. And it got to a point where Brandon Aiyuk. See, the thing is that what you say is true, but at the end of the day, the 49ers have him under contract is what we have to keep in mind.
Yes, but I think there's also an understanding that no player of Aiyuk's caliber in the Niners situation is going to play under that fifth year. And this is another part where I think the Niners have messed this up. I think the Niners have tried to posture like they would play hardball and force Aiyuk to play that fifth year. But based on what they've done and their actions this offseason, I don't believe it. Like you talked about calling Aiyuk's bluff. I think Brandon Aiyuk has called the 49ers bluff. And that's why he's going to end up signing. The question is, how does it affect and impact this season? Because we've heard from Debo and Nick Bosa, maybe we can get in this on the other side. We've heard from both those two players that their contract negotiations impacted their season. Nick Bosa was not the DPOY he was 2 years ago last season. Debo Samuel had an injury-riddled 2022 campaign, I believe it was. And those players were impacted and expressed as much that going through everything that Aiyuk is going through right now impacted how they played on the field. And that's going to hurt the 49ers.
Well, I think if it gets a little bit longer, then you're looking at a potential situation where Aiyuk is going to be affected. But right now, if he signs, gets into camp, plays either today or in their next game, I think you'll be okay. But we can continue to discuss it. Brandon Aiyuk with a I'm telling you, man, if the Cleveland Browns are giving me Amari Cooper a second and a fifth, please, Brandon, accept that deal and go to Cleveland. Do what you do because we'll take Amari Cooper in a second and a fifth. What do you think? 888-957-9570. We'll open up the phone lines. Evan Giddings, Dan Devone on a Saturday, and we roll along after this quick timeout.
The chef was cooking in Paris yesterday. Warriors coach Steve Kerr told the Morning Roast what it meant to him.
There's an added responsibility when you're playing for your country and representing.
Now back to 95.7 The Game.
Welcome back. 10 o'clock here in San Francisco. Sun's finally beginning to rear its head here in the city by the bay as we continue to talk about the San Francisco 49ers, who, by the way, will begin things and crack the seal on a new season. Preseason gets underway as they take on the Tennessee Titans. And I understand at 95.7 The Game, stay here for a post-game show. Can you detail the fans at home what's going on?
Yeah, so obviously kickoff 4 o'clock between the Titans and the San Francisco 49ers, and Mark Grandy and Sterling Bennett will be doing overtime after the Week 1 preseason game for the Niners. So I'm looking forward to hearing about that. I mean, look, there's always position battles going on. I'm interested to see what some of the rookies are able to do. Big boys are not going to play, and I feel like surrounding this game, all the news has been about Brandon Aiyuk. So at least I'm glad that I don't think he's going to sign by kickoff, but I'm glad that we can finally just begin to watch the games and evaluate the players on the field as opposed to evaluate what Parag Marathe is feeling in the front office or what Brandon Aiyuk might be posting on social media, those kinds of things.
Well, I think it's just going to come down to the number. And if he signs for 30, then yeah, he wins. He signs for 28, then yeah, the 49ers finally acquiesced. But if it's a number that's in that $26 million neighborhood, then I think the 49ers did what it is because they have a threshold, right, in all of this. And I think to your point that the 49ers blew this, if nothing else, you hope you can avoid this next year. Although I wouldn't bet on it because it just seems to be sort of the way the 49ers conduct business over the offseason. I mean, Nick Bosa, Deebo Samuel, now Brandon Aiyuk, where it's just protracted over months. But when it comes to Brock Purdy, obviously is who it is that I'm referring to. You would like to think that the Brock Purdy is not going to be this drawn out and is going to get this ugly and in the weeds in terms of some of the verbal darts that are traded back and forth. And if anything, if this is, hope this isn't foreboding in terms of what's going to happen with Brock Purdy and that the 49ers, because you have a whole year in advance.
It could, though. I mean, I do think that'll be something. Look, it hangs over the head of every decision that the Niners make at this point, and they're going to have to.
But you don't have to do this. Look at Philadelphia. I always bring up the Eagles and A.J. Brown and all those guys. The Eagles, Hurts, they get their guys locked out. I'm just using them as an example. That's not the only team, but they take care of that stuff before the summer. Like they do that in the spring. It's not impossible. You don't have to necessarily do this. It's just sort of it's sort of habitual by the 49ers in terms of their, the way they handle business. But there are other franchises where they pay players and players are happy and you create this camaraderie and you avoid this mess and you can do it months prior.
Yeah, the quarterback one will be interesting, and I think actually get drawn out probably longer than we expect, just because, and Lynch kind of mentioned it around the Bosa deal. That's to me why this Aiyuk one is more confusing. I understand why Bosa took so long because he's resetting the market. We all expected him to be the highest paid defensive player or non-quarterback in league history, and I think he still is, even after the Jefferson deal. Brock Purdy, I think depending on what Dak Prescott gets either this offseason or next when he becomes a free agent, is probably going to be paid the most amount of dollars in the history of the NFL. At least that's the way it appears right now.
See how he plays.
But even Dan, look, I think the Niners are a playoff team. I think they'll struggle a little bit this year to win the division. It's not going to be as much of a cakewalk as it's been each of the prior 2 seasons because I think the Niners have taken a step back in certain areas. The Rams and the Seahawks have taken a step forward, particularly the Rams. But if they make the playoffs, and even if they don't get back to the Super Bowl, I don't see how after 2 years as starter, 2.5 years as a starter, with what Brock Purdy's resume is going to look like in comparison to the quarterbacks that have been paid already. There's 8 guys making 50+ per year at this point, and maybe 3 of them have a resume the same as Purdy. And I think the only guy that's got a better resume to this point is probably Patrick Mahomes. So everything looks like right now Brock Purdy's going to be the richest man walking onto an NFL gridiron next season.
Isn't that ridiculous?
It's pretty crazy. But that's also what the Niners, I think, have to expect. And Jed York even said as much. He's going to reset the market. So that's what they're expecting. That's going to take a while. And I just wonder if they learn from this Aiyuk situation about trying to read markets and trying to bet on themselves winning the deal. But they've always taken a long time to do these things. And I think it's going to happen again.
Well, why does Dak Prescott have to set the market? You see what I'm saying? Why can't the Niners just get out in front of this?
Because they might be betting that someone isn't willing to pay Dak Prescott $60 million.
But that's the issue, is that, you set yourself up for Justin Jefferson to come in and blow everything out of the water, or Amon-Ra St. Brown. Get out in front of it. You know what Purdy's number is going to be. Set the market. Especially if for some reason Brandon Aiyuk is not with this football team and you have money on the sidelines, as they like to say, well, lock him up sooner rather than later. Because eventually what happens is it creates, there's a carryover sometimes, depending on who the player is.
Yeah.
And it creates bad chemistry, or at least it can. And I also think, getting back to Brandon Aiyuk, when you think about his leverage, that's one of the things that, because I unlike you, I don't think he has a lot of leverage. But I think one of the things that he can fall back on is that if indeed push comes to shove and the 49ers saying, look, you're still under contract. We don't have to deal you anywhere. We're not in a rush to trade you unless we see that we get equivalent value in return. But we could force you to play if you want to go hardball. And to me, the leverage that he has, and I don't know Brandon Aiyuk very well, and I doubt that he would do this, but he could say, I'll play, but he could be disruptive. He could be that 900-pound elephant in the room where chemistry is out the door. And I'm a big believer in that if you get it right in the locker room, it translates to the field in terms of wins and losses.
I agree, but I also don't think – I also find this funny, though, Dan. Up until this offseason, I think Brandon Aiyuk has been – a poster child for a non-diva. I mean, he's been in the doghouse of Kyle Shanahan, but I think that was more just because of his play on the field. I don't think it was because he was a disruption in the locker room. He certainly hasn't been a bad teammate. He hasn't been somebody that screamed at his quarterback. And honestly, every single one of these guys that's been on the Niners that's an offensive playmaker has at some point probably had the right to get into Brock Purdy's helmet. Like, he's a guy that is a 7th-round pick, and sure, he's proven himself, and he's a good player. He's a great player at this point, and he has earned their respect. But you don't think at any point during training camp, Aiyuk could have been like, dude, get me the ball. Like, Purdy, throw me the damn rock. Debo, Purdy, get me the ball. McCaffrey, what are we doing? All of these guys are all pros. All of these guys are either paid highly at their position or about to be paid highly at their position. They have every right to go at Brock Purdy, whether it's together or by themselves separately, the way that someone like A.J. Brown makes a stink every time he doesn't catch the ball from Jalen Hurts. They could do that. Brandon Aiyuk has never been that guy. He's never been that guy. So I just find it interesting that in one offseason, the narrative around him has changed from Brandon Aiyuk as the poster child for stability and balance in the locker room to he's a problem because he's asking for more money. No, I just think he's doing what every one of his teammates has done. The only difference is his teammates have not had to compete with the impending contract of a quarterback. That's the difference between Aiyuk and, say, Bosa, Samuel, Kittle, Warner.
Is that it, though? Do you think it...
That's what the Niners are selling us to me. I don't know if that's realistic, but I think that's what they're selling us.
Well, here's the thing. If you listen to Kyle Shanahan, because Kyle Shanahan obviously knows more football, certainly than me, and I'm willing to say that the majority of the people out there, I entrust Kyle Shanahan, not necessarily the callers and the people on the message board, although I love you. And when Kyle Shanahan is intimately involved and knows these players much better than we will ever in a million years get close to or have any idea of the relationship between the two or how good they are on the field. If Kyle Shanahan is willing to get to a point to trade you, even though I think at one point it was clear they wanted to lock him up and they know they're a better team, Is that him telling everybody, if you listen closely enough, Kyle Shanahan is telling everybody that we'll be okay, that he's good, but he's not that guy? Just for a moment, just think about it, because as ugly as it got with Nick Bosa, do you think Kyle Shanahan would ever arrive in his wildest dreams? Well, it's time to move off of Nick Bosa. Like, this is getting ugly. We got to go in another direction. Let's think about football without Nick Bosa. Do you think at any point, and maybe it did, that Deebo Samuel, they seriously got to a point where let's trade him. This is too much. Fred Warner, George Kittle, those guys all came back after, as we just laid out, heated negotiations and protracted negotiations that went on throughout the entire summer. But if Kyle Shanahan gets to a point where because listen, if he agrees to that trade with Cleveland, I believe that Brandon Aiyuk is no longer with the 49ers.
I agree.
If Kyle Shanahan gets to that point where he's willing to trade his wide receiver, is he not subtly telling all of us, if we were to listen closely enough and just stop clamoring for a moment and listen, is Kyle Shanahan not telling everybody that he ain't that guy?
Well, he's telling you he's not Jefferson or maybe Lamb or Tyreek Hill, but I think he is telling you that Aiyuk is, a borderline top 5 receiver, or he was last year at least, and he's probably a top 10 receiver. But that top 10 receiver is not worth a certain amount of money. This is the other thing that the Niners are running into.
Let me cut you off for a second, Ev. When I say not that guy, I'm not saying in comparison to the other players in the NFL, but what he's saying is that we'll be okay, that we can win without him. Otherwise, you know me, I would never trade the guy because I'm all about winning. I'm letting everybody here know that if I get to a point where I'm willing to trade Brandon Aiyuk, that's me subtly telling you the 49ers will be okay.
Well, the 49ers are going to be okay no matter what. Like, they were okay with Jimmy Garoppolo. They were okay with Emmanuel Sanders as their number 1 wide receiver in 2019. Like, they could be fine, but it's not about being fine. It's not about just winning regular season games with this team. It's about winning a Super Bowl. And that's where Brandon Aiyuk does have leverage, because if he leaves, there's no doubt in my mind that the Niners' chances of winning a Super Bowl decreases. And in a position where you might not have as much talent as this in the future, you do have to sort of bet and go all in a bit on this season, in my opinion, because it might be your last best collection of talent. Not to say the Niners can't make the Super Bowl in the future, especially if Brock Purdy flourishes at the quarterback position, but you need to keep this band together, I think, for at least one last ride. And I think that's what the Niners are trying to figure out, what they're willing to pay to do that. The other thing that's interesting about the Niners' current roster construction to me, though, Dan, is that when you pay these players so much money, and the Niners are very, very top-heavy, it's not a seamless comparison, but, for example, the Golden State Warriors, when they were in their heyday, they were very top-heavy. The Kevin Durant Warriors had 4 or 5, at sometimes, very highly paid players. That means that if one of those guys goes down, your depth is not good. That you can't afford for one of those players to either get injured or, in the case of Aiyuk, be plucked from the team. And while Amari Cooper is a good wide receiver, he used to be a really good wide receiver, in my opinion, he does not keep the Niners at the same level as Brandon Aiyuk when Aiyuk is on the field, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. I think Cooper's fine. I think he's a 1,000-yard receiver. I don't think he's Brandon Aiyuk right now. So when you just take Aiyuk away from this team, that's why they're trying to, in my opinion, they're trying to find a way to keep Aiyuk, but if not, how can they stay at the same level? It's not going to happen because you've already waited too long. You've relieved yourself of the opportunity to use a pick in the draft on someone else, recouping another first-round pick, trying to move up in the draft to get a better wide receiver. And there were some in this draft this year, not named Ricky Pearsall. I just don't think the Niners can afford at this point in the offseason to lose Brandon Aiyuk. And that's why I think they're winning, or that Aiyuk's winning.
Yeah, it's an odd time to trade anybody. And ideally, you would have done this at the draft because that player could have helped you this year. If it's all about winning this year, we'll do it prior to the draft because that guy would be in camp. And, I mean, you you would have their services. So,
by the way, the Niners made Aiyuk this valuable when they paid the amount of people that they did at those positions at that money. Because again, you don't have as much depth on your team. This is a Niners team that is very talented from the top, 1 player to the top 8 or 10 players. They're very talented. But beyond that, I don't see much on this team. And so when you pay all those guys huge sums of money, it also means that you can't afford to lose anyone that is in your top 8 or top 10 because you take a drastic step backwards. And that's where the Niners have also run into trouble, in my opinion, Dan, with trying to win all these deals, where they have been basically, they traded a lot of picks for McCaffrey. Yes, that was the right decision, 2020's hindsight. That is still the right decision on that day and today. However, you also lost a chance to get cheaper and potential young talent with the 2nd-round pick, the multiple 3rd-round picks, the 4th, the 5th. Looking at what they gave away potentially for Chase Young. Not a lot, but that's still a chance to hit on somebody. The Niners have been built through the back end of the draft. Kittle's a 5th-round pick. Warner's a 3rd-round pick. Debo's a 2nd-round pick. There are guys that are not first-round selections that have made the Niners what they've been. Really, the only dude that they've hit on as a surefire first-round position has been Nick Bosa. Everybody else the last few years has been later-round selections. And so that's where they have, to me, kind of put themselves in this hole of needing to retain for a lot of money all of these guys because there's no one behind them. And they're not in a position to where they can just go and say, all right, Pearsall, next man up.
Yeah, I don't know if I would consider it a hole because they're sort of the envy of the NFL. I get what you're saying.
They are now.
But it's about winning right now, right? And when you think about the NFL, it's you're as good as your last game. And I'm with you. You don't win it. It's Super Bowl or bust. But they recognize the window is ajar. And I think that this is a team that is all about those frontline players and the assortment of riches that this team has. That's who they are, and they're looking to win a Super Bowl. Bottom line, period. End of story. I think the other thing you have to take in consideration is that they're the oldest team in the NFL.
Yeah.
And so draft picks really mean a lot to this team right now. They need to accumulate as many draft picks, which is why if you were to stack up some of the reasons why, if you have to move off of Brandon Aiyuk, if you can get draft picks, that's something that you're going to have to get a lot of in the next couple of years because you need to your point, is to replenish and get younger. But I find it interesting that if Kyle Shanahan is actually willing to move off on one of his dudes, I'm of the belief of if Kyle Shanahan is willing to do that he's telling, at least to me, the message that I read is that, he's good, but I'll be okay with Debo, Pearsall, and Jenny. You give me those guys, I'm still going to win. And we're not going to miss a beat, and we're still going to go to the Super Bowl. I believe that this is a team, even without Brandon Aiyuk, that is still, you're not as good, but it's not an excuse as to why you don't win the Super Bowl next year. You know what happens this time of the year? We always have a tendency to play this thing on paper.
Where we're like, choice.
Brandon Aiyuk.
You can play it on the field at 4 o'clock.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
Tennessee.
But once the season starts, you begin to see the personality, the character of a team. You're like, Brandon Aiyuk, we don't need him. Look at this guy stepped up. Or we're running the ball with McCaffrey, who's now, coming out and getting these swing passes. Or Kittle's having a big year. Or you just, you don't know. We have a tendency just to look at this thing on a roster and saying, oh, you remove him, you ain't going to win. But I think in Kyle Shanahan, I trust. And if he gets to a point where he's saying, I'm willing to trade this guy. To me, what I'm reading between the lines there is that we'll be okay. We'll win that Super Bowl without Brandon Aiyuk.
Yeah. Well, you haven't won one with him. I don't know. And that's, I think, where a lot of fans differ. Some people believe that you need him to stay there. Other people believe, well, what does he help us win anyways? I think Shanahan has told us how important Aiyuk is. But look, at some point, they're going to be forced to move one of these guys, one of these aging players that, to your point, Dan, has made them the elder statesman of the NFL. The thing is, Aiyuk, to me, isn't that guy for a couple reasons. Number one, he's still very good, and he can keep you at an optimal offensive level. But number two, if I asked you this, I threw this on Twitter yesterday, at Evan A. Giddings. If you had to pick a player that in 4 to 5 years on this current Niners roster, still playing at an all-pro or Pro Bowl caliber level, where would you start?
Purdy.
I agree. Who's the second player?
Aiyuk.
To me, it's him or Bosa.
Bosa.
Yeah, but that's my point. So it isn't like signing him now and potentially losing the deal doesn't just keep you at a high level now, but it also ensures that at age 26 you have a receiver in their prime that could even get better potentially if he becomes a focal point, could put up more numbers. You build a rapport and a chemistry with Purdy over the course of time. That, to me, is a deal that helps you both now and later. It's not as if you're making this decision with Deebo Samuel or, say, George Kittle. You know, Deebo Samuel, he might be in his 20s, but his body feels like 30. George Kittle is going to be 31, if not already. So it's not like you're paying him a 3 or 4 year deal and you're expecting him to still be as good at age 34, 35. Brandon Aiyuk in 3 years, because 3 years is going to be 29. So he's still going to be in his prime, you would expect. And that's why I think that I just don't understand why it's taken so long. The Niners, if you're looking at their present and their future, Brandon Aiyuk fits into both.
Are you watching Receiver, by the way, on HBO?
Oh, I finished it. I finished it on the first flight out to Sweden, then I watched it again on the flight back.
Yeah, I saw it on the flight back, yeah. You know what's funny is that George Kittle is exactly who I thought he was. I mean, you know, like you don't get a chance to see these guys behind the scenes, and Deebo Samuel, like a lot, I like you know what I like about these reality sports shows? It's like you can sort of, at least for me personally, decide whether you like a guy or don't like a guy. Like either rubs you the right way or rubs you the wrong way.
I don't think Netflix would tell you that these guys are unlikable. Although, I don't know, how'd you feel about Devontae Adams?
Yeah, Devontae Adams is, they're exactly who, you perceive. And Deebo just seems like the best dude in the world, man.
I love Deebo. Jimmy
Garoppolo did not come off very well.
Well, when has he? In the last couple of years, in or outside of documentaries. No, Deebo Samuel was, like, we asked this question a couple weeks ago, is, which player kind of connects you to the team that's not just, the quarterback or big name guy. To me, like, Deebo Samuel has always been, to me, just, I don't know, there's something about him that I just love watching. And so I'm glad that he agreed to be a part of that receiver doc, because I just felt like it connected, at least me, but I'm also assuming fans out there even more to him, because he just is the 49ers, man.
Yeah, and the Amon-Ra St. Brown, maybe because he's with Detroit, that's the least. Him and Justin Jefferson I didn't really get into. Devontae Adams I found sort of compelling. I'm not all the... Well, did I finish it? Yeah, no, I think it did. It ends with the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah, spoiler alert. They lost.
Yeah, no, but I mean, that's the last show. Yeah, so...
Yeah, it ends with the Super Bowl.
Yeah, anyways, good stuff. So, just getting back to Brandon Aiyuk, and we can put a bow on this and move on, but we'll see I guess it just depends on what he signs for. If he signs for... What's a number to you that would, in terms of this face-off, you would at the end of the day say Brandon Aiyuk won?
28 or up per year, AAV. That would be a win for Aiyuk. Anything less, probably a win for the Niners. And if the guaranteed money is less than DJ Moore, then it's a win for the Niners. I think that's how
the guaranteed money, a lot of it has to do with ego when you look at the APY average per year. But really, when you pull back the layers, you want that guaranteed money is really what this thing is all about. But sometimes, and especially, agents will throw out the $32 or $35 million, but you have to go a little bit further.
We do have a big basketball game coming up in a couple hours.
Let's get into that.
12:30, USA Men's, Steph Curry, Steve Kerr, and then, of course, at 4 o'clock, the Niners and the Titans, Week 1 preseason.
Jason Tatum on line 2 will continue talking about the USA as they take on France for the gold medal. And Steph Curry, who just bailed them out against Serbia. That's up next. Evan Giddings, Dan Devone after this.
We're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that our daughters have what they need to grow and learn. But that isn't the case for nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. that struggle with hunger.
Childhood hunger is a heartbreaking reality.
Now back to 95.7 The Game.
You know, this used to be the theme song for the Warriors. Like, they would play Start Me Up back in the day. Somebody on the text line backed me on this. It wasn't maybe the theme song, but maybe it was for a lot of arenas. But I'm talking back in the day with Chris Mullin. They would get this thing going. And I'm telling you, the whole place was jumping. Back when
Thunder would come out at Oracle Arena to start me up.
Back when it was the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum.
Oh, my God.
Going back in the day. By the way, how was Outside Lands? You see Chris Lake, by the way?
He's tonight. Actually, I do want to see Chris Lake. Yeah, I think he's headlining. No, so, yeah, last night was fun. There's a couple, I don't know, like, what I enjoy about Outside Lands is it puts together a pretty eclectic group of musicians and artists. Like, it's not just rap, it's not just reggae or pop, or it's a bunch of different folks. So yesterday, there was this DJ from San Diego my brother wanted to see that we went to earlier, this UK band called Jungle. It's kind of like alternative. It was really good. And then the Killers came on to headline, and I dipped over to Daniel Caesar just because I think he has a fantastic falsetto voice who's absolutely incredible. You know who was at Outside Lands, though? I don't know if I'm supposed to say this. The Boss. Matt Nahigian is...
I thought you meant Bruce Springsteen.
Oh, well, no, I wish. No. The Boss, Matt Nahigian, was there to see the Killers.
Is that right?
He's like a Killer's groupie, dude.
Just going nuts to
God.
Mr. Brightside?
Yeah, I wasn't able to catch up with him because there's, X thousands of people there. But I was texting him trying to find him.
Oh, so you knew he was going to be there. You didn't just randomly run into him.
No, he texted me because I think he knew that I was going or saw something that I posted. He said, "Are you here?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm going to see the Killers. It's whatever the headline is. I'm going to go watch him." And he goes, "Oh, me too. I can't wait for Mr. Brightside." And I said, "Yeah, that's probably like the only Killer song that I know. But yes, I'm looking forward. Where are you at?" And so we're trying to find each other. He's, somewhere in the crowd. I'm somewhere near one of the 17 churro pretzel stands. Weren't able to link up. But yeah, the Boss was there to see the Killers.
Awesome. By the way, our Matt Nahigian, and I don't have any reason to suck up because I'm not, I don't work here on the payroll like you, but he's a good dude, man. He's just there's not a lot of guys or bosses, and I don't know if he's listening. Believe you me, I am not doing this because, he's the guy.
He's not listening.
But I'm telling you, man, like that is so perfect for him. There's a lot of guys that I come from a television background, and I can tell you news directors are not wired like that. And I don't know a lot of program directors, and if they're all like him, then stay in radio, man, because that's about as genuine as you get.
Well, no, he's the man number one, but I was trying to find him because I bought him a beer. He said he was having trouble with one of the lines, so I just said, "That's fine. I'll just go over and grab you, a pop, and I'll just come bring it to you." And then I couldn't find him, so of course I ended up drinking it. But yeah, there's not many PDs. Number one, that would show up to a place like Outside Lands. Number two, I think he was there just, by himself to see the Killers.
He went solo?
He just loves the band.
Yeah.
Yeah, he loves the band. And I forget who the main singer is. First name is Brandon. He texted me something like, "Brandon better pick it up." Because he's seen them so many times throughout the years that he probably knows when they have it, when they don't. And I guess he felt like they were a little dead.
Yeah, so that was sort of your sentiment as well when I asked you about the Killers. They just didn't hit it last night.
Yeah, I think they opened strong, and then there was kind of a lull. I guess there was also a fight in the middle of the crowd, and so they toned it down and basically waited till people got in there and got whoever needed to be pulled out of the mosh pit, pulled out. So then at that point, that's when I went to go see Daniel Caesar, who, I don't know how many R&B artists you're familiar with. He's not like, he doesn't have a vocal range of, say, Anthony Hamilton, but he's really good, man. There's a lot of love-making music going on last night.
So you said that there was a fight last night. So one of the reasons, this is what happened when you get a little bit older.
I was not in the crowd.
Well, I cannot deal, I've got to mitigate the idiot factor, which is hard for me to go to even football games these days. If it's the Raiders or whomever, I just can't hang with that. So,
college football games are the worst.
So talk to me about in terms of the stupidity at these things. Is it pretty blatant? Is it pretty muted? Pretty chill?
Well, that's another reason why I like it, is I also think the age range is pretty wide.
Yeah.
So you don't get a lot of people that are fighting. In fact, I've never seen a fight at Outside Lands. I've seen fights at other music festivals. because there might be a lot more drugs involved. But I that was the first time I'd heard of a physical altercation going on at Polo Field. So, look, I'll be back out there today. I'm looking forward to a nice, mellow set, just going from Schoolboy Q into, I think,
Teddy
Fletcher's
Swims?
playing. Teddy Swims is tomorrow. Looking forward to that. And then might go check out your boy Chris Lake. We'll see.
All right, so
Before then, though.
So what time are you heading out today?
I'm going to head out after I watch the USA gold medal match.
Oh, well, that's a perfect segue. Before you get out to the outside lands and do what it is that you do, let's talk about that matchup against France for the gold medal. I think
you were just in Paris. Did you have a chance to see the USA men's team?
I didn't see any basketball.
International man, not even a mystery, just the international man, Dan Devone, was in Paris. I am so freaking jealous that you, number one, got to go to the Olympics. Number two, saw my favorite event and match game singular moment from the entire Olympics thus far.
Well, I'll tell you, I had a little food poisoning. So I wasn't at full strength, but I dragged myself to Roland Garros. I mean, Roland Garros, it's all about venues. Like the Aquatic Center is close by. Roland Garros is close by. They have the beach volleyball right in front of Eiffel Tower. So I was just going to events that, I wasn't gonna leave Paris, or I wasn't going 45 minutes, or 20 minutes was about my cutoff. So Roland Garros was right there. Yeah, I'm telling you that tennis is one of those things that you have to see in person. It doesn't translate to television. It was pretty amazing. And the French put on an amazing show. We always have this perception that the French are sort of this elitist. Well, the waiters are. If you're going to go eat in a restaurant, the waiters are, yes, that's them. But in terms of the people and the volunteers, they knocked it out. They just absolutely crushed it.
You went to the gold medal match.
Yes, Alcaraz. And our man
Djokovic.
It was. I wasn't at 100%, but it was incredible stuff, man.
No, I watched it live. I watched every single point of that tennis match. It was unbelievable.
It is the athleticism of those guys you can't appreciate until you actually see them in person. It's one of those things that you got to go check out. But yeah, I the Americans always stand out, which you love,
Well,
a little bit bigger and louder than everybody else, but God bless them. But it's
especially Dan Devone.
Yeah, so it's a good. It was done well. Plus, there was a lot of upheaval with the politics, and not to go down this road.
Do they think you're Italian over there?
They don't know what the hell to think. I'm sort of like, what my agent, said back in the day when there was CBS in New York was interested in me. And yeah, thank you very much. And I had just signed a contract in Seattle, my agent being an agent. And New York was like, well, what is Dan? And so my agent, being, again, sort of a guy who would sell me to whomever, just said, Dan will be whatever it is you want him to be. Do you need a Latin guy? You need an Italian? You need something of Asian descent? Like Dan is very flexible. He'll change his last name if you want.
Devone is culturally ambiguous.
All right. Let's get into it. The United States, get any Olympic music for me if you get an opportunity? I love that.
I don't even know where. Hold on.
Don't worry about it. Let's talk about the United States and France. There's no way there's no way the United States is not winning the gold today. Is that right?
I don't think so. Look, the semifinal matchup between Serbia and U.S. was magnificent.
That was their loss if it was going to happen.
Yes. I think there is zero chance the USA does not take home the gold. Number one, because they're better than everybody. I mean, I'm looking forward to watching Wembanyama. Evan Fournier, for some reason, in international competition, turns into Michael Jordan. This guy's been unbelievable thus far.
It's a different game. The FIFA, it's not entirely, but it is distinctively different.
It's closer to the college game, I think, than, I guess, like an NBA game. The lines are a little bit shorter. The three-point line is in a little bit. There's different rules and things you can do. But I just think because the court is a little more constrained, you can't just spread teams out. And I think that's maybe why somebody like Jason Tatum and his skill set is not as valuable in the international game as he is in the NBA game, because I don't need to put 5 shooters on the floor. In fact, I could use a little bit more size against a team like Serbia or even today like France. So no, the game offers itself to teams that are more cohesive. And I think teams that also play tougher. There's not as many ticky-tack fouls, so a team like Serbia can get into the U.S. jerseys. And I think they did that That was the reason why they're up at one point by 17 and 13 going into the fourth quarter. Like, think about that, Dan. What we would be talking about today if the U.S. had lost that game. That is, I do think there is a pressure-filled scenario that only comes about every 4 years for men's basketball, just because there's not only an expectation to win every single game, but there's an expectation to blow every team out of the water. And while I think that's going to happen later on this afternoon between the U.S. and France, that did not happen against Serbia, number one, and it looked like they were going to lose that game for much of it.
Let me ask you this. Let's just say, for the sake of this discussion, that they indeed lose to Serbia, or say they fall to France today. Who takes the brunt of that criticism? Is it LeBron? Is it the team? Or is it is it Steve Kerr?
Well, for Warriors fans, it's probably anybody but Curry. It's probably Steve Kerr. Yeah, I think most of that falls. Like, I can't remember who the coach was. Was it Larry Brown was the coach in 2004 when they got the bronze?
I want to say, yeah.
Yeah, they lost to Argentina.
It was Coach K one of the two.
Yeah, either Coach K or Larry Brown. But I don't remember a lot of those players catching hell. Like, and LeBron was younger, Carmelo, D Wade. I don't remember some of the older players on those teams. I don't remember if there was a lot of flack for those players, but if they had lost, to me, that is on the players as much as the coaching staff. I mean, it's a total meltdown if you don't take home gold, right?
What do you think about this not playing DNPing Jason Tatum?
Yeah, it was Larry Brown. Thank you. Sorry, what?
Well, what do you think about this not playing Jason Tatum?
I don't think it's much to do about anything. I mean, it is
Tatum, if you're from Boston, man. Well, believe me, they believe the conspiracy is in after the rivalry between these two a couple of years ago when they won the championship. That Boston takes this to a whole nother level.
Well, I do think that it shines a light on what the majority of NBA fans are actually, as opposed to what they pretend to be. They're fans of individuals. There's two other Boston Celtics that are playing big minutes for Team USA, and I don't hear them heaping praise upon Drew Holiday or Derek White. I just hear people being loud about how Tatum isn't playing. And Tatum is a damn good player. Tatum is one of, I don't know, maybe the top 7 to 8 players in the NBA. On a given night, it could be top 3 to top 5. But on this team, he's buried behind forwards that are better than him for international play. It's not as if he's not playing because Derek White is better. Derek White's a guard. Drew Holiday's a guard. Those players are in that rotation. Jason Tatum is competing with LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis, and I forget which other forward is in that rotation. Like, that's who he's trying to get on the floor over. And in the U.S., I'm sorry. I'm not putting Tatum in over either of those two guys.
Draymond Green cracking on his coach in his podcast indirectly, not mentioning his name, but he went off and he had to take a very strong take on the fact that Jason Tatum wasn't playing and should have been playing. It gets to a point where I guess it's just another day in the life with the Warriors and Draymond Green, and you become sort of desensitized. But this should be more of a story than it is. And maybe I'm making something out of nothing. But if you're playing for your head coach and you're criticizing his decision-making in the Olympics, any chance there's a carryover?
No. I mean, the only way that Kerr gets killed is if they lose against France today. And I do think that he will be the one that is skewered if they do lose. It's going to be on Kerr. In fact, I saw that on Twitter throughout the Serbia semifinal game. Everyone was talking about Steve Kerr.
Why did he do it? Why do you want to be the Olympic coach?
I mean, it's a great honor.
Yeah, I know it is a great honor. I guess just, you know what I'm saying? It's just take the summer off. Who the hell wants to deal with this? It's a lose-lose, right? Because
he's only doing it for this Olympics, I believe.
No, I know, but I guess my point is it's a lose-lose if you think about it. Because you're expected to win. If you win it, yeah, well, good job. You get the best the best players in the world. You should have won it. The only thing you can do is, you lose that thing, and it's just it could define you in a lot of ways.
Well, then why would LeBron or Durant or Curry play?
Well, that's an interesting point.
I mean, I understand why Curry's playing. He doesn't have a gold medal, but Durant and LeBron James do.
What's interesting about LeBron, and I think you mentioned this during the break when we were talking about it.
The Captain America.
It's applicable to Steph. Those two's careers are really similar right now. They sort of mirror one another, if you think about it. Obviously, LeBron's older. He's 39. Steph is going to be 37. But they're clearly on the downside of the mountain as far as their playing days. And they're both with teams, let's face it, the Lakers and the Warriors are not going to the Western Conference Finals. They're not playing for an NBA championship.
They got to get to the postseason.
Stranger things can happen, but those are two teams that are going to be, slugging it out to get into the play-in. I mean, if we're to be real about things. And they know that. And LeBron intimated that this is, as far as his career, this could be the last time he's playing in big games like this, where everybody's watching. And this is his championship, because it ain't going to happen with the Lakers. And the same could be said to a certain degree with Steph Curry.
I agree wholeheartedly. It's what we talked about during the break a couple segments ago. There's a very good chance that today is the last biggest game that Stephen Curry will ever play in.
Wow.
And is that because of the Warriors? Is it because he's 36 going on 37? Is it because the league around him is just simply better? I think there's a lot of reasons why that could be the case. But I do feel strong. It's one of the reasons why I'm going to be locked in, and I hope Warriors fans don't take it as I don't believe in Golden State, but I look around the West. I find it very difficult to see where the Warriors fit in terms of the top four, which is what you need to be to get into the semifinals and beyond to even compete for a championship. It's why I believe that Steph also wanted to play in these games, because he's a competitor. He wants to be in big games. And he did not get a chance to play in any big games last year with Golden State because they missed the postseason entirely. The biggest game he played in was a play-in game. They got beat by 30 in Sacramento. And I believe that this gold medal match means a lot to Curry, number one, because he doesn't have one. And he talked about it actually after the 2022 finals. But it's also because there's probably not a lot of big games left in his career. Same for LeBron James. Same for Kevin Durant. These are aging superstars that are on teams that don't have a ton of flexibility, that haven't shown, at least in the last season, that they can get them help, specifically Steph, enough help to prop him up. And so if things don't change quickly in terms of roster construction, if they don't find a way to bring in another big-name player, I don't see an avenue in which that's going to happen anytime soon. This could be the last biggest game he ever plays in. And that's a shocking thing to think about, but I think there's a pretty good chance that's the case.
They were so good together in that fourth quarter, and LeBron just has played so well with Steph. And there's a lot of people that, this is sort of taken on an identity of its own in the Olympics, that Steph and LeBron need to play together. And so Nick Wright took it to new lengths, and he came up with a trade. And it's not bringing LeBron to the Golden State Warriors, and it's not Steph playing his final years with the Los Angeles Lakers. And he was very serious about this. But Nick Wright proposed that he's like, everybody has to see this happen. Like he actually said the commissioner should get involved to make sure that, it is sort of tongue-in-cheek, that LeBron James and Steph Curry play together, because everybody needs to see this. The Olympics are too much of a tease. So he suggested, and he put out there, that LeBron James and Steph Curry respectively get traded to the San Antonio Spurs. And there was a boatload going back, including draft picks to the Warriors. I believe they get Devon Vassell, their young star player, some other guys, and draft picks. So it would make sense to the Warriors. And then the Lakers get, some young players. But he was serious about Wembanyama, Chris Paul, Steph Curry, and LeBron James with San Antonio. Thoughts?
I mean, that's a lot to unpack there. I don't know. I haven't thought much about San Antonio this offseason, to be honest. Like, I don't know. The Warriors, the trades that they make or don't make this offseason, and it doesn't look like they're going to make any because Lowry Markkanen is finally off the board. We can finally put that baby to bed. But I think they're just kind of biding their time. I don't think the Warriors are opposed to cashing in their chips, their young players, and draft picks for an impact guy. But I just don't think that there's one out there that they see, nor that I see at this point, that's worth doing so. And that might be somebody at the deadline. I think best case scenario for this season, Dan, is that they're competitive. They're playing above 500 basketball for the majority of the first half, and they look at themselves as being a player or two away, the way that the Dallas Mavericks were for making a run. And that's when they pounce. The issue becomes, if they're good this season, I also think it's probably because Jonathan Kuminga is helping you. I think it's because Brandon Podziemski is helping you. How, to what extent, I'm not so sure, but I think those players are impactful if you're winning basketball games. And then at that case, you might also find yourself in a position where you don't want to move either of those guys for a big boy. And I don't think that they're inclined to. And they have shown us nothing in terms of their body language that leads me to believe that they're willing to trade either of those two players, even if one of them apparently wants a rookie max.
Well, let's get into Jonathan Kuminga on the other side. Do we have time? Do you want to take Austin now?
Yeah, of course. Let's talk to him.
Let's get out to our man, Austin. Austin, you're basically, who joins us from San Jose, our third wheel on Saturday mornings. How are you, buddy?
Hey, fellas, what's going on, man? I mean, what is Evans been traveling? He's in the theater this morning. I mean, all this drama dramatic around, Curry's last big game, and oh my God, come on, man, this is not great performance. This is not Curry's last dance. Do you think for a second that Curry's going to put up with this off season that Joe Lake has put together and his going down to the summer league, and all of a sudden Podziemski is the future all-star? I mean, this is the biggest posturing that I've seen in a long time. You look at this lineup, guys; they better get off to a good start, because if we don't get off to a good start, we think a superstar and if anything, the Olympics has reminded everybody Curry's still a superstar. I mean, everybody's talking about he's diminished, he's getting older. He is, but he's still a superstar. So you can have a superstar in the NBA playing with a bunch of guys that are just guys. I mean, that's the miss. So I'm disagreeing with you a little bit, Evan, saying they better be better than 500 at midway, because I can assure you, Mr. Curry, even though he doesn't go around talking like Draymond, I would not interpret that silence or that lack of it to that as someone who doesn't care. He's going to be pushing to get some guys in here that can play on his level. I love these guys you guys are talking about, but J.K. and Podziemski, there's no way in hell they're going to be able to rise to the occasion this year to get the Warriors into the playoff position they should be in. So that's kind of my thoughts, guys. Enjoy the rest of the day. See ya.
Ev, you want to clap back on the other side?
Yeah, well, I don't know about clapback because I do love Austin, and his thoughts are always interesting to me, but I'll respond on the other side with why I believe that. I mean, how
long have I been telling you this is a rebuild or a reset or a step back, and that's the best thing to do? For whatever reason, people just will not get their arms around that. It's just I can't tell you how many times I continue to do shows and people just think that they're one player away, or maybe we'll get this guy, or it's Lloyd Martin. I'll do it one more time for the sake of my sanity, of where the Golden State Warriors are at and where they're headed, and also want to hear what Ev has to think after Austin didn't call you out, but just your thoughts on what it is Austin had to say. All right, we continue here on 95.7 The Game. We switch things to the Golden State Warriors. Back after this.
So, how's your research going?
Surprising. After I figured out the top-rated TVs in our price range, I went shopping for deals.
And who's the best?
on Odyssey Sports Station. Always live on the free Odyssey app, Twitch, and YouTube. Powered by First NorCal Credit Union.
I know everything.
Now, back to Steiny and Guru on 95.7 The Game.
Old habits.
What's up, Goo? You look a little different today, Goo.
Yeah, I'm missing some melanin.
I just got a text from my sister. Throwing away the polka dot backpack for mom. This is so much better. It fits perfectly with her stuff. So I brought my mom a bag.
Please explain.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just gonna leave it at that. But my point in this is that it's as parents get older, it becomes much easier to get them gifts. Like I just got her a bag that said New York City on it, like a bag where you can just transport stuff in it and she's over the top, thrilled with it. It's a lot easier than dealing with people who are much younger and trying to, get them the latest shoes or clothing items. Get mom a bag. I mean, how hard is that? I'm talking like a little tote bag. All right. Warrior talk. Here we go. Ev, you want to go first and talk about the state of the Golden State Warriors and Steph Curry, and if this team is struggling at the trade deadline, does he want out? Is he going to demand that they get other players? Is this a team that is still trying to match timelines to get Steph that title before it's too late? Are the Warriors still trying to be relevant? Where are you at?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too far ahead because I don't prefer to think about Steph Curry not being a Golden State Warrior. But what I don't want to respond to is Austin's comment before the break about how it was a response to what I said about the Olympic game. Look, the gold medal match is coming up in about 90 minutes. Curry, LeBron, KD, Steve Kerr, best 12 players in the world are going to be going up against France. I think they're going to kick the crap out of the Frenchmen and take home the gold. My point was simply, and this doesn't just apply to Curry. I think it applies to the three guys that brought home the semifinal match towards the end, which were Durant, LeBron, as well as Steph. And Steph had a magnificent performance. And Austin's right that he proved that he can still play at a high level. And he can still be the best player on maybe the best team in the world. My point is that I do think that there's a chance that for LeBron, for Curry, and I'll throw even Kevin Durant in there, that today is the last biggest game that those three players will play in. And it's as much to do about where they're at in their careers as it is about the state of their franchises. I don't think as currently constructed, the Warriors are a team that are going to challenge for a championship. Does that mean they can't be good? No. Does that mean they can't be a top 8 seed? Maybe a top 6 seed and get out of the play-in? No. I just don't see in the Western Conference how any of those three players on their current teams are going to win not 1, not 2, but even 3 series to get back to the finals. And what are we talking about today with the Olympics? We're talking about a gold medal match. This is the championship. This is the finale. And if you're talking about getting to the finals, the NBA finals, in the current association, right now, I don't see it for any of those three players. And so that's the only point that I was trying to make, is that I think there's a chance that one of the reasons why LeBron, Curry, KD all wanted to play, in addition to representing their country, playing together, having fun, winning the gold, doing it, is because there aren't many big games left in their basketball careers. And there is a chance that for all three of those guys, this is the last biggest one they play in.
And you're talking about the Lakers, the Suns, and the Warriors, respectively. And
yes, because I think all three of them are in kind of similar positions. Now, Curry's got less help than LeBron and Durant, but they're all in similar spots in that I don't consider right now any three of those teams championship contenders.
And LeBron intimated as much. He said at age 39 that this could be the last time I'm playing in games with this level of importance. I would say this, that when you talk about the Warriors, and I'm with you, this is a team that is going to be slugging it out towards the latter part of the season for potentially a 5 seed, as high as a 5 seed and as low as an 11. And all those teams in between are going to be jostling and sliding back and forth, and maybe they get into the playoffs, and maybe they steal They steal around. To me, Ev, that is good enough for Golden State right now. Like, that is, for the Golden State Warriors, and to appease Steph Curry, that's all you're trying to do. At this juncture is just be competitive. You win a playoff series, wow. And I think that's enough to grab his attention, to keep him around, and to placate him. A lot of people will disagree and say, well, he's all about championships. But I think at this juncture in his career, he's not going anywhere. LeBron's not leaving LA, and Steph is not leaving San Francisco. But just be competitive. And that's all the Warriors are going to try and be this year, as they get their arms around this team financially. Getting under the luxury tax was certainly something that we've discussed. And I think also identifying a younger core and identifying a new base and foundation to this team as you go forward, so that you have some structure and a future to this basketball team. Currently, there is no future. It's all about sort of these aging players and this dynastic run that has come to an end. And one of the most difficult things to do, and one of the most difficult challenges for any basketball team or football or baseball, it's applicable, is how do you, after being a dynastic team and going through this remarkable run where you won multiple championships, how do you go off to the sunset and still be relevant? And it's a difficult thing to juggle. And so what the Warriors have decided is that, okay, we're going to be competitive as these guys get older. And hopefully we can identify and continue to build through the draft and maybe some free agents that while we're competitive, we will not be competing for titles in terms of the Western Conference dominance and or NBA championships, but hopefully in a couple of years. And when I say a couple, you're going to have to be patient for 2 or 3 years. You'll be back after it. And you can get back into the mix in terms of being mentioned as one of the teams that can win a Western Conference, that can get back to the NBA Finals. But you got to go through this. And this meaning sort of the down period. This meaning sort of like not getting a free agent, not getting yourself tied to a player and maxing somebody out like that of a Paul George. And this meaning a team that is just simply going to lean in on the youth, that this has to happen before you become a good basketball team again.
It does, and that's why, again, the Warriors are stuck between loving their young players too much and not having enough runway for their older, still Hall of Fame caliber players. Like, I also think look, Curry was unbelievable in the semifinals against Serbia, and I think he's probably going to play pretty well against France. But what was the storyline for Steph Curry up until that semifinal match? He'd been shooting sub 30% from three-point range. Now, that's not to highlight that he's not a good player, but my point is that those performances are going to become less and less consistent as he gets older. So you need younger players to be a bit more consistent when he is not. And I look around the Warriors roster, I don't see enough of those guys right now. Unless, and this is the position they're in, their main hope is that someone like Kuminga or someone like Pajemski, or I don't know, maybe DeAnthony Melton and Buddy Hield can be good enough consistently to overcome when Curry has those, 3 for 14 nights or has a 6 for 20 game, because he's going to be shooting a lot. I don't see a lot of other guys on this team that are volume shooters and shot creators the way that even Klay Thompson was last year. And I think it was a good decision for them to move off of him because you start the transition, but you leave yourself pretty bare as far as weapons are concerned. And so more's going to be on Curry this year. And I think there are going to be a lot of games in which he does go for 36 or for 40. And there's going to be a lot of comps between him and older aging superstars and how great he is still at his age. And it's unbelievable that he's still doing this stuff. But every once in a while, he's going to have some stinkers.
Yeah.
And when he has stinkers, the Warriors, I don't think, are going to win those games. So, yes, Curry is dominant on an international stage with the best players in the world, and he has proven that with some help, he can still get you to the top. He can get you to the gold medal match. But he also was a guy that didn't shoot it very well and is in the gold medal match because they didn't need him to be great every single night. If Curry has an off day against France this afternoon, which is a possibility, I think they win running away anyways. Because, Curry's not great? Well, that's fine. We got KD, we got Bron, we got Book, we got Ant, we got, Bam, we got Embiid, we got AD, we got, there's so many players to the point that we're talking about Tatum getting DMPs and the team still making it to the precipice of glory. I don't know. I hear Austin's point and a lot of points about how Curry's still dominant. I just think it's unfair to look at the best 12 players in the world or the best American players in the world and say, with a little bit of help, Curry can still get you there. I'm sorry.
That dominance with a small D these days. You're right. This Olympic run here, the Olympics and the United States team now going for the gold medal is just sort of a snapshot of where Steph Curry is that he can give you 36 and hit the 9 threes, but doing that consistently or the sustainability to do that over a long stretch of games and time, and that, of course, is we're talking about an NBA season over the course of 5 months and 82 games. He's not that guy anymore. He's not, and you have to come to that realization that Steph Curry is, he's a 1, but he's a 1A. He's just not, you can't, Father Time is undefeated. And now more than ever in his career, he is reliant on a supporting cast. And the Warriors just simply don't have it. The Warriors they have him who's a star, and then that's it. He comes off the floor, and who's consistently do you feel is going to give you baskets? I don't know. We can get into Jonathan Kuminga. Maybe he takes that step. But if I'm a team defensively, it's pretty obvious. Steph, I'm sorry. The minute you cross the timeline, maybe before that, we're double teaming you, maybe triple teaming you, because nobody on that team scares me at all. DeAnthony Melton, Buddy Hield, these guys are, come on, man. These are journeymen. These guys they're okay, but if you're on a good, really, really good team, then you can slot these guys in and they can play a role. But in terms of them being a number 2, what are we doing here?
No, and I don't think that, look, Markkanen was the best number 2 out there, but even if Markkanen is on this team and the Warriors were able to move, Moody and a bunch of picks and still keep their young guys, I'm still not sure that I like the Warriors better than Denver, better than Minnesota, better than OKC. That might make them, the 4th best team in the West, but that doesn't sound like a title team to me.
No, it's not.
I think that gives them a chance to compete in the playoffs. But if they were matched up against those 3 teams with what I saw last season and with the chance for them to get better, maybe Denver because they took a step back losing KCP, but I don't know. I just don't see it, Devone. I don't. The Warriors right now can be a good competitive group, but as currently constructed, Curry can still have the Game 4. He can still have the 2022 Game 4, just apex of his career. I still think he's capable of that. But you have to get to that game first. And I don't see it right now with the Warriors. And even if they had Markkanen, how they'd be able to get to that game to allow him to have that moment.
Here's the one thing.
You would have to have so many of those games just to get to that point.
The one thing that I do not want to hear, and it's bannered about, I hear a lot of people, and some people I respect, that feel that they were Lauri Markkanen away from getting back to a title. They're Paul George. Are you on the you might be one of those that firmly believes that Paul George was the missing piece to getting back into NBA Western Conference relevance.
Well, I think he would have given him the best chance of the players out there.
Here's what
that were available this offseason.
Yeah, but he's 34 years of age. He's not. I think a lot of people romanticize that he's that guy in Indiana. I've said this. Listen, gather around, class. I'll do it one more time. Grab your pens and pencils. Danny's going to take the podium and just once again, school is in session. Ev, let me just ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about this team being, a Paul George away, Lauri Markkanen away, a Kevin Durant away, you give me the player whoever it is that was supposedly available. And here's the reason why they are not. And I apologize for those of you that have heard this before. But Ev, back in 2016,
okay,
would you not admit that Steph Curry at age 27, 28, Clay at 26, Draymond 25, around there, speaking of apex, that they were in the prime of their career?
Yeah, absolutely. That was 73 games. You're playing your best.
They lose to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, the NBA, if you remember back at that time, 2016, so you were about, 12 years old?
2016.
So the 2016, you have the NBA was catching up to the way the Golden State Warriors had sort of redesigned the way the sport was being played. Everybody shooting threes and getting out in the motion. They were closing in on Golden State. They had just lost to Cleveland. So the Warriors decided that back in 2016, they were one player away. And that one player happened to be Kevin Durant, who also happened to be in the prime of his career, in those ripe ages of 27, 28 years of age. And guess what? They were right. They should have three-peated if it were not for the injury to the Achilles of Kevin Durant. And, of course, it was Klay Thompson who shattered his ACL. You mean to tell me, Ev, that we want to fast forward this thing eight years? Steph is going to be 37. Draymond's 35. You already shipped off our man, Klay Thompson, because let's not sugar this thing. It's because he was too old. He lost the step. He was not worth it.
Wasn't very good.
He was no longer a two-way player. You mean to tell me you want to fast forward this 8 years and you're still going to try and convince me that you're one player away? And that one player now is Lauri Markkanen, not Kevin Durant in his prime? Or that one player is Paul George at age 35? Not Kevin Durant in his prime, not everybody in their prime? You were once one player away. Now, I'm sorry, say it with me, fans. You are in the midst, don't call it a rebuild if you don't want to, if that's a bad taste in your mouth. You're in the midst of something different. That this is a reset. That this is just sort of, we're just going to lay low for a little bit, and then we'll come back. If you sign Lauri Markkanen, you got to max him out. You got to give up some assets. You got to give up draft picks. And then you know who you are. You're the Golden State Warriors before Steph, before Steve Kerr, where you're on the outside looking in and you're in that damn lottery for the next 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, look, all of those things are hypotheticals, and I don't really want to go down all of those roads. But I think bringing it back to the gold medal match today, it's an opportunity to watch Curry perform at the highest level with the most he's going to have around him ever. It's the last time he's going to get to play with these kind of teammates. And I do wonder how the experience in France will impact the way that he comes back to America and looks around and sees and kind of views his teammates. Like, one thing that I always find fascinating about international travel, I don't know if you feel the same way, Devone, but it's when you come back, and part of it has to do with the jet lag, so you're a little kooky, but you tend to view your location, your residence, through the prism of where you've previously been. At least that's how I did. So like when I came back from Rome, I started walking through San Francisco and viewing these buildings through the prism of, wow, this is modern. The architecture's different. Obviously, Rome is a city that's thousands of years old. San Francisco is all but a couple hundred years old. That kind of stuff. Same thing with Sweden, yada, yada, yada. But I think it's completely natural to wonder what Curry's going to feel when he walks into training camp after playing with the best 12 American players in the world. How much patience is he going to have? He's already on record saying he doesn't want to be, for lack of a better terms, a bottom feeder for the rest of his career. Well, if he sees players that are more inclined to get them towards the bottom than the top, how is he going to view that? How is he going to feel about that? Is he going to be a little more urgent this season? Is he going to be more vocal? Is he going to try and do more of it himself offensively? How is he going to take the onus upon himself after not needing to be the guy? He still can be the guy. He's the best player in the semifinal match, no doubt about it. But he didn't have to be the guy every single game for Team USA, nor does he necessarily have to today. He needs to be the guy each and every day on and off the court for the Golden State Warriors, and he has. But he's never had this lack of talent around him or this lack of help around him. And I just wonder, to me, it's fair to wonder, based on what he's playing with right now, if he's going to be anywhere close to happy with what he sees when he walks into Chase Center.
There's a good chance, and I hate to say this, but it's just reality, especially at age 37. Last year was sort of the outlier. He didn't get hurt. I think he played in the most games he had in over 10 years.
Yeah.
There's a good chance that he, along with Draymond, are going to miss some time. That's been Steph's MO for so long. I hope it doesn't happen. You don't wish injury on anybody. But if Steph goes out with a prolonged injury, which is a good chance, unfortunately, and that's just life in the NBA and professional sports when you get on the wrong side at 35. If he's out for a month and a half, whether it's, remember the shoulder back in the day, or it was the back, or, he's had some injuries. Who carries his team? Like, seriously, I know that's always been sort of a question, but you had Clay, and you've had players in the past, but if he goes out this year for a substantial period of time, who scores the basketball for you? And before you say Jonathan Kuminga, has that been proven? I like Kuminga, but
I think he's proven as a scorer, but it's
a consistent scorer.
Well, it's unclear as to whether those points equate to wins.
Well,
he could walk into 20 points, but
you can walk into 20 points when Steph's on the floor and there's other weapons, but if you're suddenly the guy, that's a whole nother dynamic. We know Jonathan Kuminga is the only guy that is a threat to score, so we're going to focus on you. Can you still give me the 20 to 25? I guess that's one of the leaps he has to take.
Yeah, I would argue at points last year he was the guy, even with Steph out. He didn't always play alongside Steph. There were times in which he was asked to carry particular portions of games. I think Kuminga can. It's funny. Being a scorer is the last thing that I have a concern about with Jonathan Kuminga. It's literally everything else that I wonder about. Now shooting is a part of scoring, but I think he's talented and athletic enough, just whether it's on runouts or back cuts or drives, getting to the free throw line. I think he can walk into 20 points. The question is, can he be closer to a 25 point per game score than he can to an 18 per game score? And I think he was at 16 last year. When he received the opportunity to start, he was around 20. But there's a lot of 20-point scorers in the NBA. Not a lot of them at age 21 years old, but there's a lot of guys that can get you 20. There's not a lot of guys that can impact winning with the points that they score. And so that's, I guess, my biggest concern is that can he rebound? Is he going to be able to pass? Is he going to be the lockup defender that he showed himself to be at times last year, but not all the time? Can he do it more consistently? And can he do it for an 82-game season? Because, again, we saw his knees get hurt a little bit towards the end of the year. I don't think that's anything to be worried about long-term, but I think it's because he'd never had to play this much basketball in his life. So when you're playing, 1,500 to 2,000 minutes in a season, how is your body going to hold up? Those are the questions that I have about Kuminga and why I personally, we can talk about it on the other side if you want, not give him the rookie max, which he reportedly wants.
That's a good segue. When we come back, we'll wrap things up talking about the Warriors and more specifically Jonathan Kuminga, who wants to get paid. We'll lay out the numbers that he's asking for, and we'll ask you whether you think he's worth it. Evan Giddings and Dan Devone on a Saturday morning here on 95.7 The Game.
Are you curious about who offers the best deals on top-rated Samsung, LG, and Sony TVs? The answer is surprising. It's not online, and it's not the warehouse clubs. The best deals on top-rated TVs.
Now back to 95.7 The Game.
Welcome back to the final half hour. Evan Giddings and Dan Devone taking you right up until noon. And then sit back and you can enjoy some Olympic basketball as the United States goes for the gold against Wembanyama and France. You clearly know that is going to be an away game for the United States. As you can always tell, when you're in the Olympics, Ev, is that if there was a French participant or a French team, it was clear because the roar was just thunderous. So it's going to be a partisan crowd, if you will, out there in France. And they really, they support their athletes. They are all about, as is everybody else. But you can imagine if you're the host country, the nationalism is going to be over the top. Also this afternoon, go ahead. You want to chime in about the...
I was just going to make a quick joke. Not if you're Joel Embiid.
Meaning?
Well, he's technically a French citizen.
Oh, that's right.
He chose to not play for France. Every time he's touched the ball, he's been booed. So you know either they're French or they're a French enemy when they're on the floor.
He was very good, by the way, as we talk about, Steph and LeBron. He was a difference maker, I felt. So, yeah, or this afternoon you can enjoy the San Francisco Giants. One thing we did not talk about is Camilo Devone, no longer on the roster.
Yeah, you can spell tranquilo with 3 A's because he's in Sacramento. That is something that is a bit perplexing to me. There's usually steps. Look, Bob Melvin, Farhan Zaidi, not a lot of people like either of those two guys or have liked them this season, but they still know more baseball than you or I put together. It does confuse me, though, because there's usually steps to a demotion.
Well, it's on the heels of him blowing that game the other night.
No, I understand that. And he's blown a lot of games this season. But before you option a guy to AAA, especially someone that's been an all-star caliber closer like Camilo Devone, usually you demote them first. And what I mean by that is their role. You start with their role before you move them to Sacramento completely. Now, there's some things that Duvall's got to work on, no doubt, but he's still a pretty good option. And I don't know why they wouldn't just move him to the 7th or 8th inning before, because someone like him I find to be, honestly, Dan, quite fragile. And I think by doing this, you might just completely ruin his confidence and that you're not going to get the same player back at all. So he might not be the close of the future for the San Francisco Giants. I'm not sure if he might help them a whole lot this season. I don't like the move of sending him to AAA. I think moving him to the 8th inning or the 7th inning, using him in other situations, and who knows, behind the scenes, he might have just said, look, if you're not going to use me in the 9th, just send me down to AAA and I'll figure out my stuff down there. But I think they skipped a couple steps.
Is it Ryan Walker, the closer now?
Probably. Yeah, he's been their best reliever. Him, or it could be a closer by committee.
One of the Rogers?
Yeah, if there's more lefties, it could be Taylor. I think it's even Tyler. I think he's got reverse splits, but
I think you hand the keys to Walker.
I agree. Yeah, I think he's been their best closer start to finish all season in terms of stuff, in terms of high leverage situations, in terms of availability. Ryan Walker to me would be the logical choice.
I think that Camilo Devone, I see it a little differently. I think he's a closer bust. So hence the move. If he's not going to be your closer, then it's feast or famine. If you're not closing, then we're going to option you out. I don't see him as a setup guy. He just doesn't have that mentality. And I also think you talk about his fragility mentally, that if you move him down to that as a setup guy, he just is not going to take that well. That dude is either closing or he's not. And if you reach a point where he's not, then, hello, sack of tomatoes.
Oh, well, this is the other guy I did not consider, Jordan Hicks.
Oh, that's right.
Hicks is a guy they could just move into the closer's role.
Well,
in fact, that might have been the role all the time.
Wasn't he with St. Louis? I wouldn't say he was more of a setup. I don't think he's ever closed.
He gravitated between both spots, but he did close for St. Louis. It's hard to keep a guy in the 9th inning when he throws 103.
Yeah. Well, anyway, San Francisco Giants this afternoon continue their series with the Detroit Tigers, looking to go 3 games over the 500 mark and could inch within a game of potentially catching the New York Mets for that final playoff spot.
They start same time as the Niners, 4 o'clock.
Yeah, well, I'm willing to.
Who's going to be watching what?
The viewership is going to be sort of one-sided there.
We got all day Bay Area Sports Day. We got Curry and Kerr tipping off at 12:30, and then the 49ers playing their first preseason game at 4. Giants going at 4. Trying to go for a 4th straight win, Dano.
A little water polo at noon that I know you'll be watching me in action. Also part of that slate. You know, when we talk about the Golden State Warriors in all seriousness, the Jonathan Kuminga news, and I'll let you tell the people at home where he wants the rookie max. If you could just lay out how much that is and what you think the Golden State Warriors will do.
Well, the Franz Wagner deal is the rookie max that I think Kuminga is also eligible for. It'd be $240 million.
Franz, by the way, in action right now is Germany trailing Serbia for his.
$220 million.
Sorry, the bronze medal game with Franz is going on. Go ahead, say that again.
No, $220 million. 5-year, $220 million. That's the rookie max that I believe Kuminga, give or take a couple $1 million, is eligible for. And so it was reported yesterday and just got swept under the Niners rug that Kuminga reportedly wants the rookie max. And in one breath, Dan, I can't blame him. Like, I think, look, I don't know if I was on the air with you a month ago when I said this, but the moment that Wagner got the max, that told me that Kuminga wants the same thing, because I think he believes he's every bit the player, if not better, than Franz Wagner. The issue, Jonathan, is, I'm sorry, and you might be better than Franz, you haven't shown even half of what Wagner has so far.
Yeah, and
as far as on the court.
And I would also argue that Orlando overpaid.
Yeah.
Which was a mistake.
They did.
Yeah, that's a lot of money to give Jonathan Kuminga. But Jonathan Kuminga is slowly, we're talking about the leverage play with Brandon Aiyuk and the 49ers. I mean, the leverage is slowly beginning to sort of like the hammer's going to his hand. Not necessarily entirely right now, but when you talk about Jonathan Kuminga next year, think about a year ago where at the beginning of the season and throughout the majority of the first part of the season, he wasn't getting any playing time. That's not going to be the case now. Jonathan Kuminga, as we have talked about, is probably going to be relied on to be their number 2 scorer. So if that's the case, if you want me to be your number 2 on this Golden State Warriors, maybe I can't command that, but my role here is a lot more significant than it was a year ago. That I am, not only am I starting, but I'm closing, and I'm going to be next to Steph Curry, the second guy in ascending order in terms of putting the ball in the bucket. And that gives you some prowess.
No, look, I think Kuminga's in a good situation. He's got a team that values him. He's young. He gets to play with 2 Hall of Famers in Draymond and Steph. He's in a good spot, but I cannot justify in any world paying him $40 million a year and giving him $200+ million at this point. He just hasn't simply shown nearly enough for me to be comfortable with that. And I also think it's interesting, Dan, that this offseason we've heard a lot of trade rumors, and Podziemski has been the name that's been floated in a lot of these deals specific to Markkanen, more so than Kuminga. And that also tells me that the Warriors, number one, don't want to move off the pods. It's another conversation. But also, I don't think they see Kuminga as a max player. So how I feel like this plays out is the Warriors try to negotiate him down. I do think they make an offer to him this summer. And depending on what that number is, I think it's going to be far closer to 30 than it is to 40 per year. If he says no, well, then you let him test restricted free agency. And that's a little bit of a gamble. But if you're offering him the max at this point, I don't know how much money you could cost yourself if he has a breakout season. The Warriors, to me, would be inclined to just kind of wait and see with Kuminga unless they can get him for a number that's reasonable, and $200+ million is nowhere reasonable. As much as I love Jonathan Kuminga, that is absurd for him to make that much money.
Yeah, I think he needs at least another year to prove that he can do this on a consistent basis. If we take a look, just sort of people in that $40 million neighborhood, there are some surprises here. Fred VanVleet. That's some highway robbery at 40.
Well, but Houston also overpaid to get a player like
exactly.
that.
Anthony Davis coming in at $40 million a year, 40.6. Trae Young at 40.1. 16 other players at $40 million. Zach LaVine is at $40 million.
He's going to be making 50 real fast. But again, like those players, look, they're not worth their contracts. Oh, Anthony Davis is. Trae Young, Zach LaVine, I forget who the other guy you just mentioned. To me, they're not maybe worth those numbers.
Van Vliet. But they've also accomplished a whole hell of a lot more than Kuminga. So I understand why those teams paid those players $40+ million. And Anthony Davis, I think his contract is coming up. He's going to be making a lot more than 40 per. But Kuminga has not shown enough, and that's kind of where we're at. It's the conversation I think a lot of people are having surrounding Brock Purdy to some extent, and he's not going to play in this preseason. I don't expect him to. But conversation is going to be, is Brock Purdy worth the most money ever at the quarterback position? Because, and it's like every single week we're just going to have, a Brock stock kind of ranking, right? Has he made himself money? Has he lost himself money? I don't know if we do the same with Kuminga because it's not as astronomical, but it's kind of the same thing. Like, has Brock Purdy proved enough to become the highest paid player in the league? The market might say that he is. I don't think the market is telling you right now that Kuminga is a rookie max player, even if someone like Franz Wagner made it. What do you think that price tag is next year?
Kuminga?
No, Brock Purdy.
Oh, Purdy?
Are we starting with a 6?
Yeah. Yeah. Per year, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think Brock Purdy right now is a $60 million quarterback.
Wow.
And I think he will be the second one behind Dak Prescott.
$20 million more than Patrick Mahomes per year.
Yeah, I mean, Mahomes has a lot more money wrapped up in his deal. Like, as far as the total money.
Yeah.
So right now there's only one quarterback that is making, his deal is worth $300+ million, and that is Patrick Mahomes. I think the next one, Dak Prescott's got a chance. A lot of people don't like him, but Prescott has, he's a damn good quarterback, and he keeps you competitive, even if he doesn't get you postseason victories.
I've never been a Dak guy. I mean, I don't get it. I'll never understand.
Well, you go look at his numbers. Like the reason why no one cares about his regular season numbers is because he falls short in every single postseason.
He throws a lot of picks in the regular season as well, though. Way too many for me to max out a guy at $60 million.
He hasn't played well enough in big games, but I mean, Dak Prescott was higher in the MVP voting than Purdy was last year. Yeah. And whether that's right or wrong, that means he's going to make a lot of money. I think he's going to become a $60 million quarterback, whether it's for the Cowboys or whether it's for the New York Giants or whether it's for another team in the NFL. And once Dak Prescott gets $60 million, there's no way in hell you can tell me that Brock Purdy's not a $60 million quarterback.
Who would have thought? And by the way, $60 million for a guy on a tractor in Iowa. What's he going to do with all that?
He's not even making $1 million this year. From a tractor. I don't know if he's that much of a farm boy.
Let me just digress and go back to your Chargers for a minute because Justin Herbert's on the shelf, as I understand it, right? That could be something that could. I'm sorry, man. Your Chargers are just snake bit. Because that's one of those
They're
things.
They're charging before the season starts.
That's
the only thing that could hurt him.
That's sort of Joe Burrow-esque, right? Like that could plague him the whole year.
Yeah, I mean, he's got plantar fasciitis.
Oh, that's not good.
Or an injury to his plantar fasciitis. And yeah, he's going to have to deal with that the whole year. Joey Bosa's already got a wrist injury. It's funny that like when they got Harbaugh this offseason, he might be the only guy that's Charger-proof, right? Because he's a track record of winning wherever he goes. No, we might find out he actually isn't Charger-proof.
No, this is why I think he'll still win is because...
For me, it's back to work and attacking with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind.
I love that guy. Well, here's the thing. Well, who is it? Easton Stick? Is it the kid out of North Dakota State?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
His first NFL start, he was down 49-0 at half.
Well, here's the reason why you should have a level of optimism, Ev.
Okay. Talk to me, Dan.
It's Harbaugh. And what does Harbaugh do? He going to run that thing right between the tackles. He'll get 2 tight end sets. He's done it he did it at Stanford. He did it at the Niners. He did it at Michigan. He's sure as hell going to do it with the Chargers.
He also had a great line after the draft. They took Joe Alt. He's like this monster of a man. And someone's like, so what'd you have to say to the people that thought you're going to take a wide receiver? You guys don't have any. You traded Keenan Allen, got off Mike Williams. What would you have to say to those people? And he goes, we view offensive linemen as weapons. But, I mean, and the Niners, it's funny because to bring it back to them, they have so many weapons. And the one guy we haven't really touched on much is really the only big piece of their offensive line, and that's Trent Williams.
He's your biggest weapon in my estimation.
Yeah, he is probably the most important player on the team, or at least on the offensive side of the ball, outside of the quarterback.
And it's just a matter of doing it. You know you're going to do it, right? It's not dissimilar to Christian McCaffrey. It's just a matter of getting the dollars and cents in line. I'm okay with these guys missing camp up to this point. I think that even missing a game, you know what's sort of what I think is the tipping point now in the NFL when it comes to the preseason? It's not preseason games, but it's these scrimmages. Like there seems to be more of an emphasis now on these scrimmages with teams. And I think their first scrimmage is with New Orleans towards the end of next week.
Yeah.
Like if you start missing those, then it gets a little bit, okay, getting a little late here. And this is when you start talking about having some rust and carryover come Monday night against, the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers and company. So I'm okay now with Trent Williams, who wasn't going to be playing tonight anyways. But it's getting a little late with him and Brandon Aiyuk, so something's got to happen.
Yeah, do you think Trent or Aiyuk signs first? Or does it really matter to you?
Well, my focus is on Trent. I would say Trent, but I'm guessing here. I have no idea.
It sounds like Aiyuk and the Niners are closer, but that has also been played out far more in the public eye than Williams has. The thing that confuses me a bit is why Williams hasn't gotten the flack that Aiyuk has for basically holding out over money. He's under contract for a far longer period of time than Aiyuk is. He doesn't have guaranteed money, but beyond this year, nothing is guaranteed for Brandon Aiyuk. So, I don't know. He's definitely played this more like a vet. I also think that Williams, he has sat out a lot of a season prior, so he's shown he's willing to hold out. I don't know. It's just like the old school versus new school approach to me between those two players. But because of everything surrounding Aiyuk, Trent just kind of he's been chilling.
Well, scrubbing your account, the passive aggressive little sort of shots, it just doesn't bode well from a PR standpoint. I don't think. But you're right. Brandon Aiyuk has done nothing wrong. Listen, you're going to pay Christian McCaffrey. You're going to pay all of these guys and not pay me. A lot of it is just respect at the end of the day. I think that's where a lot of these players live. And it's just there's the sensitivity at that level of show me the respect. There's a sense of insecurity by I think a lot of professional athletes. And when it's time for them to get paid, you feel as though you deserve top dollar just so that the family and mom and dad respect you like the rest of the kids. Like you took care of everybody else. Now it's my time to get some taste.
That's true, but I also think that it's just where Aiyuk scrubs social media, and again, everything has been more in the public eye with Brandon than Trent. But I also think it's because Aiyuk didn't at the beginning of this offseason have as much leverage as Williams did. Like Williams knows he's far more important to the offense than Aiyuk is. He also has done this before. He also has made a ton more money than Aiyuk has. And so, like, for example, if he doesn't play today, by the way, I think Williams gets fined $1.1 million. He knows that if he gets what he wants, that money doesn't mean anything. What he wants is to be paid as the highest paid tackle in the league. And that right now, the gap between where he is currently and the highest paid left tackle, I think, is $6 million. Okay, so that's still a $5 million net. He's already been fined, I think, $100,000. Is it
Sewell Penny? Is it the kid
$500,000?
Is it Detroit that the kid Sewell Penny from
Tristan
Oregon?
Wirfs for Tampa Bay just got paid. Yeah, so but Penei Sewell makes $28 million. So Trent knows he can just wait it out, and he knows that the Niners need him. So I think he knows that he can play it quietly and appear to be the grown up in the room and the big guy and just the silent soldier. Whereas Aiyuk, I think, needed to create more urgency from the Niners, because I think if Aiyuk had played this offseason like Trent Williams did, I don't think he would be in a better position than he is now.
I know I'm alone sort of in this thinking, but Brandon Aiyuk to me is not the difference between that team winning a championship. And maybe I put less value. He's good, and he's important to that team, but you're still going to be very, very good offensively without Brandon Aiyuk. Like when it came to Bosa, when it came to Warner, when it came to Kittle, there was a compilation. There was a resume where those guys had done it you could see the ascension where it's time to pay me. Bosa from day one hit the ground running. Same with Kittle. Same with Warner. Brandon Aiyuk was in a doghouse the first, couple of years in the NFL. I mean, he had his breakout year last year, and he was good in 2023. But to me, it's not as much of a slam dunk when you compare him to the previously mentioned guys that got new deals or extensions over the last 3 to 5 years.
No, but if you're not going to envision Samuel being around for a long period of time after this season, which could be the case, then who are you left with? Well, Debo's also much more injury-prone receiver than Aiyuk has been. So you can pencil Brandon in. I don't know. I mean, Aiyuk to me is not a top 5 receiver in the NFL, but I do think the Niners need him. Do you think that they get to the Super Bowl last year without Brandon Aiyuk? I don't think so.
But I think if you're playing this year without him, and a lot depends on Ricky Pearsall. I don't have an issue with Juwan Jennings stepping up. I mean, I don't know their depth, but
I think a lot depends on Purdy.
A lot of it. I'm such a big Kyle Shanahan fan because a lot of that is, we talk about Brock Purdy being a system quarterback. Well, there's some truth to that. He's good. He's a good quarterback, but he's also the product of Kyle Shanahan. And it's also applied to Brandon Aiyuk, who you can call him a system-wide receiver. He's schemed open simply because Kyle Shanahan and the cast of characters that the Niners have. I mean, who are you going to focus on? You put Deebo Samuel in motion, just simply have him go right to left across the formation. The entire defense is keeping an eye on him. Same with Christian McCaffrey. If Kittle is headed to the right flat, how many guys have to focus on that? And so he becomes a benefactor. I'm talking about Brandon Aiyuk of all of those assortment of riches. And I don't, if he goes to Pittsburgh and, Mike Tomlin says, all right, go out, line up wide right and just beat your guy, beat their best defender, get open and do what you do, put up those huge numbers that you did, last year with the 49ers. He's not that guy. He's not Tyreek Hill. He's not going to shake a guy. I mean, he needs to be schemed at times to an open area. But that's not to take away from the fact that he's a good wide receiver. But I think that there is a balance there that Kyle Shanahan has a lot to do with it. He's got his fingerprints all over the success of Brandon Aiyuk.
Well, that's why I think the Niners' quote-unquote window for contention is not closed after this year, but I don't think it dismisses the fact that this is their most talented roster that they will have for some time to win a Super Bowl. This is the greatest collection of talent that they will have for the foreseeable future because of the contract they're going to have to pay Brock Purdy. So that does put urgency on this season. But you're right. If you believe in Kyle Shanahan and you believe in John Lynch, then they will be competitive for a long time, and I think they will. But being competitive is not good enough for the San Francisco 49ers based on where you've been. You've been to the biggest game. You have to get it done. And if they don't, it's going to be one of the greatest what-ifs. We're going to be talking about them like we talk about the Buffalo Bills. And that for a franchise that is...
4 straight Super Bowls and not one to show for it?
Yeah, I mean, that for a team that just ran the table in the 80s and 90s practically, that's a very different tone when you talk about the San Francisco 49ers. Because in my lifetime, they've been the team that has not gotten over the hump. But the team that was before my time was the team that when they were in, they win.
Well, I think this all gets back to Jimmy Garoppolo overshooting Emmanuel Sanders. That was the Super Bowl.
Oh, couldn't let it go,
Speaking of Emmanuel Sanders, think about that team. 2019, they really didn't. Deebo Samuel was a rookie, so he hadn't established himself as a wide receiver. He was good, but they didn't have any really wideouts on that team. Marquise Grissom.
A good one.
A good
Grissom's the center fielder.
Kendrick Bourne.
Pigeon-toed center fielder.
Kendrick Bourne, and then Dante Pettis.
Oh, boy.
They were terrible. And then they went out and got Emmanuel Sanders, who was good, but I guess my point being is that, you don't always have to be wide receiver-centric in order for Kyle Shanahan to get you to that Super Bowl.
Throw the ball to Kittle.
All right, my man. What do you got going the rest of the day?
I'm going to head over to a friend's house, watch this gold medal game between USA and France, and then I'm off to see Schoolboy Q at 4 o'clock.
With Nahagian? You and Nahagian going to team up? A little pre-funk?
No. If you see me at Outside Lands, feel free to say hello. I'll be having a good time with a couple friends and family.
All right. That's Evan Giddings. This is Dan Devone. And, of course, thanks for joining us. We'll see you, I believe, back here next Saturday from 9 to 12. Until then, enjoy the rest of the weekend, everybody. So long.
So what are you reading?
I'm checking out the ratings on the new TVs, and it looks like Samsung, LG, and Sony got the best scores.
Just like last year. What about those new high dynamic range TVs?
They got the highest scores of all, but their prices are really high.
Did you check online?
Yeah, their prices were about the same.
Well, there's one place where we can get a hot deal on those top-rated models.
Where?
At Video Only. Check out the ratings on TV stores.
I